Chapter 7:14. Me. Give up. Be assimilated. Ao Siphon lifted one of its dragon claws and pointed at its own face in confusion. It said coldly, Lin Yuan, I came to see you because I respect you, but it doesn't mean that I'm afraid of you. Although I don't know why the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas values you, you're just an outsider to me. You're not qualified to point fingers at me. 36 years ago, the evil dragon camp fought with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. They fought bloody battles for 2 months. Even if we don't count the subordinates of the Dragon Palace, the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas with the direct bloodline lost more than 8,000 people. And this was only the first battle that made you famous. After that, the evil dragon camp fought more and more fiercely and crazily, as if they wanted to perish together with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. So I think highly of you, because you're much stronger than those guys who only have the bloodline of the Dragon Tribe. They're called dragons because of their bloodline and appearance, but you're called a dragon because of your strong will. Maybe you don't understand, but in my hometown, dragons have become legendary creatures. But countless people still like to use dragon as a title to promote someone's strength and extraordinariness. This kind of strength is not the strength of strength, but more of a kind of recognition of the world. 36 years ago, Ao Siphon was still a dragon in my eyes, but the current you, hee. Lin Yuan shook his head in disdain as he spoke. He said in a deep voice, it's just a facade. How can you think that the evil dragon camp is just a backup plan prepared by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? How ridiculous is that? Could it be that you, Ao Siphon, have forgotten the purpose of establishing the evil dragon camp? Ao Siphon was speechless. It could only stare at Lin Yuan blankly, not knowing how to answer Lin Yuan. Of course, it knew why it established the evil dragon camp. It was just that 36 years had passed. For a long-lived species that was born with a long lifespan, although it still had a lot of time, its temperament was constantly suppressed and suppressed. The dragon clan's heaven's pride had been polished into a blunt knife by various existences with ulterior motives. Now, Lin Yuan's words were like a blow to the head, directly stunning Ao Siphon. Back then, when I established the evil dragon faction, I only hoped that the dragon race of the Four Seas would become more prosperous. Only by eliminating those unnecessary prejudices and outdated ideals would the dragon race of the Four Seas be able to continue existing in this world. My goal is only to make the dragon race of the Four Seas better. Ao Siphon's voice became softer and softer, as if its confidence was not enough to finish its sentence. That's good. Lin Yuan laughed. People who pretend to be asleep can never be woken up. If Ao Siphon avoided this topic, it meant that Ao Siphon was beyond saving. But now, it seemed that this heaven's pride of the dragon race was unwilling to give up its ideals. However, under the constant polishing of reality, it had lost its edge and started to fade into the crowd. The two of them sat opposite each other. After a moment of silence, Lin Yuan took the initiative to speak. You established the evil dragon faction in the beginning. Your goal was to make the dragon race of the Four Seas better and more complete, not to become a refuge for the dragon race of the Four Seas. The advantages and disadvantages of your strategy of absorbing the evil dragon faction are obvious. The advantage is that your strength has grown at an astonishing speed. From the beginning of guerrilla warfare to the establishment of various bases and the beginning of positional warfare with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, this is enough to prove this point. Speaking of this, Lin Yuan paused again and said in a deep voice, but the disadvantages are also very obvious. Those who violated the rules of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and were thrown into the evil dragon pool are all characters who can take charge of their own affairs. However, they are not the same as you. They have their own ideas and personalities. They are innocent and sinful. When you mix them together, you are splitting yourself. It can be said that you brought this upon yourself. Is it my fault? Ao Siphon raised its head and looked at Lin Yuan with a puzzled face. It didn't know what to say at this moment. It just wanted to help as many evil dragons as possible because in its eyes, those who violated the rules of the Dragon Palace didn't deserve to die. It was more because of the rules of the Dragon Palace itself. For example, it just adopted some children who had lost their parents because the dragon race of the four seas invaded the endless sea. What was wrong with that? As a father, it wanted to give its wealth to its children. What was wrong with that? How innocent were those children who died in the hands of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? How innocent was it, the heaven's pride of the dragon race, in the past? Was it because those sea monsters didn't have the dragon race's bloodline that it was a crime for them to live in the deep sea? Since ancient times, it wasn't the only innocent one among the dragon race of the Four Seas. Even worse things had happened before. It only wanted to save these evil dragons and hoped that these evil dragons could borrow its strength to save more evil dragons to strengthen itself. When its strength reached a certain level, even the ancestral dragons would have no choice but to back down, right? Of course, it's your fault. Lin Yuan firmly confirmed Ao Sifan's self-judgment. He didn't want to comfort it at all. In fact, your biggest mistake is that you still have mercy at this moment. In my eyes, the Dragon Palace has reached the root. If they don't experience a destructive attack, they will never be able to correct it. Your idea is just an idea. Ao Sifan lowered his head as a thoughtful look flashed across his eyes. Lin Yuan also kept silent, giving Ao Sifan enough time to think. To be honest, he was trying to fool Ao Sifan. However, he was willing to give Ao Sifan enough time to think because this problem had troubled Ao Sifan for dozens of years. If it couldn't figure it out in the past, it wouldn't figure it out now unless it could travel through time and see the real answer with its own eyes. However, Ao Sifan was, after all, an ambitious person who could establish the evil dragon camp. It was still suspicious by nature. Therefore, Lin Yuan had to be patient. If he kept urging it and didn't want to give it time to think, Ao Sifan wouldn't choose to believe him even if it couldn't figure it out. No, the evil dragon camp has been accepted by the dragon race of the Four Seas. As long as we can become the new dragon race of the Four Seas. At that time, my idea will be realized, right? Ao Sifan was like a drowning person who grabbed a life-saving straw. It stared at Lin Yuan with cold eyes. It seemed that it didn't want Lin Yuan to give a negative answer. It also didn't want to say what the sentence after "as long as" was. Tomorrow is 2021. I wish you all the best in the new year. I wish you all the best and have a meteoric rise. Chapter 7:15. As long as the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is destroyed by the aberrant, you will become the new dragon race of the Four Seas. As the supreme dragon of the evil dragon camp, you will be the irreplaceable chief. By then, can your idea be realized? Lin Yuan grinned and showed a ferocious smile at Ao Sifan. From the beginning of the statement to the final rhetorical question. Ao Sifan stared at Lin Yuan, panting heavily. His vertical pupils were red. Lin Yuan stared back at Ao Sifan and said coldly, "The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas won't be destroyed so easily. Even if they lose this battle, they will leave enough backup plans to ensure that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas will still be the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. At most, they will have a new master. The higher-ups in the evil dragon camp must know about these backup plans, but you don't. Do you really not know who these backup plans are for?" Ao Sifan's expression changed gradually. According to the original plan, he could even win without doing anything. Even though it was funny that he had been fighting with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas for so many years, and even the spies of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas began to occupy high positions in the evil dragon camp, he was still just an evil dragon. However, because of a sudden war that no creature knew why, he had a chance to win without doing anything. The unspoken words were, "As long as the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was destroyed. Victory is won by yourself." You want to fight for hegemony by relying on charity and luck. You will have a miserable end. Lin Yuan slowly raised his head. His eyes seemed to have passed through endless time and space. Suddenly, they became deep and profound. He said, "If you don't want to end up like that, I advise you to pull yourself together. I don't ask you to join hands with me, but I hope you can seriously consider my suggestion. Because before I came here, you have been abandoned. You don't even have equal information. Do you still want to wait to reap the benefits?" Why was the evil dragon camp infiltrated by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? In the beginning, it was indeed one of the backup plans prepared by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. After all, the Great Old One's terrifying mental infection ability was right there. It was impossible for them to tolerate any normal creatures walking in their territory in a normal state. This was because their original goal was to destroy this world, destroy the so-called new era, and turn everything into the old era they were familiar with. Only then could they take back everything they had and turn back into normal creatures. Or were they normal in the first place? For Lin Yuan, who had been influenced by his previous life and firmly believed that everyone was equal and that man could conquer the heavens, wouldn't he be a typical outlier in this feudal dynasty controlled by the aristocratic families? Wasn't Lin Yuan assimilating the normal people of this era and pushing the world towards the situation he was familiar with? However, these secrets were not known by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. This was because the Great Old Ones appeared in the West Sea because they wanted to use this opportunity to land on the Sky Marshall continent and directly threaten the northern frontier. However, their distorted appearance and terrifying infection ability made it impossible for them to communicate peacefully with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Facing this group of unknown monsters, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could only fight to the death. Until now, the Great Old Ones were getting stronger and stronger, and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was getting weaker and weaker. After suffering setbacks time and time again, it was normal for them to misunderstand the other party's intentions. Therefore, they split off from their race and became the enemy of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, becoming the evil dragons. This was to ensure that when the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was defeated and destroyed, these evil dragons would be able to rely on the new master of the Endless Sea and continue the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. This was a very normal thing. In fact, for a world where martial strength reigned supreme, there was no difference between humans and demonic beasts. If one wanted to conquer an area and establish one's own power, one would have to experience a bloody storm. Even the powerful Dragon Clan of the Four Seas couldn't directly become the master of the Endless Sea. Now, only a small part of the Dragon Palace was derived from the combination of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and the sea demonic beasts. Most of them were the sea demon clans that dominated the Endless Sea in the past. They had once fought a bloody battle with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. For example, the drunken whale incense that Cyrus had used in conjunction with the illusion was targeted at the Whale Clan. The Whale Clan was a powerful clan that was not inferior to the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas in terms of strength and size. However, the Whale Clan's consumption of food was also very terrifying. Sea areas like the Willowstone Sea could only feed one member of the Whale Clan even if the whole area gathered its strength. Some weaker sea areas didn't even have the ability to feed one member of the Whale Clan. The Whale Clan's population was even rarer than that of the Dragon Clan. This was the only reason why the Whale Clan lost to the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas and gave up the position of the overlord of the Endless Sea. In addition, the Whale Clan had a one-track mind. Therefore, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, who were afraid of their power, directly exterminated them. Perhaps there were still some descendants of the Whale Clan in the vast Endless Sea, but it was already difficult to maintain the population. They were no longer a threat to the rule of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. With a classic example in front of them, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas naturally wouldn't repeat the same mistake. Therefore, the remaining evil dragon camp was not weak. Except for a few high-level members who knew the truth, most of the evil dragons were sincerely hostile to the dragon palace of the four seas. However, as the war progressed, the dragon palace of the four seas also realized that even if the evil dragon camp was split, it would be useless. Because the aberrant wouldn't allow their existence, even if they had never done anything to fight against the aberrant. Painstakingly planned, but it was useless. How laughable was that? However, the dragon palace of the four seas didn't expose this matter. Instead, they planned another way out. They planned to sacrifice some members of the dragon clan to delay the aberrant, so that the main members of the dragon clan of the four seas could retreat to the Tianwu continent to ensure the survival of the aberrant. At least, the evil dragon camp didn't know much about the aberrant, so it could be said that the information of the two sides was not equal from the beginning. The evil dragon camp treated the dragon palace of the four seas as a sacrifice and a selfless elder. However, the dragon palace of the four seas treated the evil dragon camp as a stepping stone and a bait to attract the attention of the other sea demon clans. If they didn't take this opportunity to attack the dragon palace of the four seas, would they wait to be played to death by the dragon palace of the four seas? Supreme Dragon Head, there are two dragon bloodline demon beasts outside who want to see you. They claim to be former members of the 9 Sons of the Dragon. Their code names are Yazi and Fu Shi. We said a few perfunctory words and then came in to ask if you want to see them or not. An evil dragon that seemed to have the bloodline of the sea monkey ran in, not afraid of Lin Yuan's existence. Chapter 7:16. Former members of the 9 Sons of Dragon. Yazi and Fu Liang. What are they doing here? Ao Sifan murmured to himself, the confusion in his eyes growing. Originally, Lin Yuan's previous words made his brain feel like it had been stirred into a paste. Now, a new problem had appeared before the problem was solved. The great dragon of the evil dragon camp was directly stunned. He even subconsciously turned his head and glanced at Lin Yuan, as if he had been fooled into thinking that he was lame. Lin Yuan looked indifferent and said indifferently, "The calculation of the dragon palace of the four seas is good." Including Yazi and Fu Xia, a total of 7 members of the dragon palace participated in the destruction of the Lushur Sea area. 2 of them died during the escape process, and the whereabouts of the remaining 5 members of the dragon palace are unknown. Where do you think they went after escaping? Ao Sifan only pondered for a moment this time, then said in a deep voice, "They caused a great disaster, which is equivalent to offending the Siren Guild and all the Siren clans that are hostile to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Then, their first reaction would be to return to the Dragon Palace, because the other forces would not dare to nor can they protect them. The only ones that can let them live are the behemoths that can wrestle with the other forces." Ao Sifan was not stupid. The reason why it was being played by Lin Yuan was that the information they had was not equal. Lin Yuan knew that the aberrations were the Great Old Ones, and he also knew what their purpose was. Although he did not have much contact with the Great Old Ones, Lin Yuan knew more about them than the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, which was fighting against them. Now, the news of the 7 Sons of Dragon wreaking havoc in the Willow Stone region had spread throughout the entire Deep Sea region under Cyrus' arrangement. Knowing the inside story, Ao Sifan's reaction was naturally very fast. After a while, Ao Sifan's face suddenly turned gloomy, and he said coldly, "What does the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas take my place for? These Sons of Dragon caused a great disaster, and they directly put me here. Should I clean up their mess for them? Supreme Dragon, why don't I go and chase them away?" The evil dragon who delivered the message also looked anxious. Although the evil dragon camp wasn't as powerful as the Sea Monster Guild and the Dragon Palaces of the Four Seas, it was still a famous force in the Endless Sea. Of course, it was well informed. Previously, it hadn't figured out what was going on. But now, it seemed that the Dragon Palaces of the Four Seas wanted them to take the blame. "Lin Yuan, you owe me an explanation." Ao Sifan looked coldly at Lin Yuan, his voice filled with killing intent. It was true that Long Josie had wreaked havoc in the Willowstone Sea region. However, those who were well-informed knew that Long Josie had gathered in the Willowstone Sea region because an unknown water dragon demon beast had suddenly appeared in the Willowstone Sea region. Moreover, it was highly valued by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. If Long Josie had not seen Lin Yuan before, he might not have thought much of it. But after seeing Lin Yuan, Ao Sifin quickly realized that Lin Yuan was that mysterious water flood dragon. Lin Yuan must have some secrets. That was why the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas paid so much attention to him. More importantly, Lin Yuan had just come here to disturb Ao Sifin's mind, and then 2 former members of Long Josie had come here. It was hard for Ao Sifin not to suspect that Lin Yuan did not have any plans in this matter. Even the appearance of the 2 former members of Long Josie was probably part of Lin Yuan's plan. Especially the conversation before, he gave Ao Sifin just the right amount of time to think. Then, he deliberately made things mysterious to arouse Ao Sifin's curiosity. However, before Ao Sifin could ask, a subordinate came in to report that Yazi and Fuzi had come to see Ao Sifin. It was not that Lin Yuan didn't want to answer Ao Sifin's question, nor that Lin Yuan didn't give Ao Sifin time to think. It was Ao Sifin's subordinate who came in to report that the members of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had come to see Ao Sifin. It was hard for Ao Sifin not to suspect that all this was deliberately arranged by Lin Yuan. However, where did Lin Yuan get the ability to influence the thoughts of the higher-ups of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? I will give you a reasonable explanation, because my explanation has already come to you, isn't it? Lin Yuan smiled indifferently, as if he couldn't feel Ao Sifin's killing intent. No living creature, including himself, was willing to be schemed against by others. However, the world was like this. Everyone could unknowingly become a chess piece in the hands of others. Without knowing it, they could play their role in the chess game of others. Even those almighty beings were not necessarily an exception. You. What do you mean? Ao Sifin was startled again. Squinting its eyes, it asked. I can assure you that from today onwards, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas intends to share some information with you. However, this information absolutely has nothing to do with the aberration or the future situation of the Endless Sea. If I'm not wrong, they will ask you to protect it. Sigh. Before Lin Yuan could finish, Ao Sifin sneered and interrupted Lin Yuan. She said coldly, if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas made a mistake, why should the evil dragon camp pay for it? It's true that I have taken in the evil dragon camp who made a mistake. However, why should I protect this kind of idiot who has brought disaster to the entire tribe? You will. Lin Yuan sighed and then said with a determined face, because they will tell you my identity. In addition to protecting them, they will also ask you to send your evil dragon subordinates to search for me in the entire Endless Sea. I can guarantee that since the internal division of your evil dragon camp, no cooperation has reached the scale of this time. Because the spies may have contacted the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, they will fully cooperate with this matter. As long as it is in order to search for me, as long as you open your mouth, you will understand what a real great dragon is like, not like now where everyone is doing their own thing. So. Ao Sifin yawned and said with a disdainful face. What can the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas give me? Do they want all their spies to be loyal to me so that I can control the evil dragon camp one more time? Not necessarily. Lin Yuan smiled and shook his head. Even if they give you the authority, it's just a facade. As I've said before, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas has prepared a backup plan to deal with you. Thus, whether you control the evil dragon camp or a part of it, it doesn't matter to them. Then, Lin Yuan kept silent for a while. His smile gradually became bitter as he continued, they are sure that you can't refuse the order. The bargaining chip is me. Thus, the conversation between you two will be about the aberration. The Dragon Palace of the West Sea will also reveal the current situation to you. At that time, you won't hesitate to capture me in exchange for the last chance to survive. Chapter 7:17. A.O. Siffin's expression changed slightly, but there was no change in its eyes. It was as if the change in its expression was a performance made to match Lin Yuan's words. After a moment of silence, A.O. Siffin said slowly, "What you mean is that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas has already made arrangements. We, the evil dragons who were seen as the hope of our race, have become the sacrificial lambs in the eyes of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. It is because of your appearance that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas made a concession and decided to accept us and give us a chance to live. That's generally correct, but there's one thing that's ridiculously wrong." Lin Yuan grinned and said with a smile, "In this world, I'm afraid no one understands the aberrations better than me. Now that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas has realized that they are no match for us, they plan to retreat to the Tianwu continent. They want to borrow my power to plan a place for the dragon race of the Four Seas to reproduce. However, this is not a path to survival. It's just delaying the arrival of despair. The goal of the Great Old Ones was to destroy Lin Yuan's northern frontier. However, the new era that Lin Yuan started had already let countless people see the benefits. According to Zhang Xiu's information, the various empires had already begun to secretly implement the new laws of the northern frontier. They planned to use this to suppress the power of the aristocratic families and sects, ensuring the longevity of the imperial family. It was hard to say what the future would be like, but at least in this period, the new era was no longer opened by Lin Yuan alone. Even if the northern frontier was destroyed, the era was still on the path of evolution. Therefore, the goal of the Great Old Ones was never the northern frontier. From the moment they were born, they wanted to destroy the world. When everything was over, they would become ordinary creatures and reignite the fire of civilization, returning everything to the era they were familiar with. At that time, they would still be heroes, gods, and rulers. The other party was not a demonic beast that fought for territory, but the Great Old Ones that wanted to destroy the world. The strategy of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was to give up the Endless Sea, but the other party would definitely not stop. Retreat to the continent. In theory, it was possible. However, not long after, the aberrations of the entire Endless Sea would attack the continent crazily and finally destroy the world that was changing into a new era. Supreme Dragon Head, the two outside are waiting anxiously. Another evil dragon who came in to report muttered softly. However, his gaze was always on Lin Yuan. A cold light flashed in his eyes, emitting an ominous aura. Boom! The second Sin Dragon that came in to report didn't even have time to open its mouth before its head was smashed by Lin Yuan's tail. That's why I said that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is rotten to the core. Without a single nirvana of destruction, they will never learn what reverence is. Lin Yuan withdrew his bloodstained tail and looked at A.O. Siffin again, saying, "Supreme Dragon Head shouldn't mind if I teach your subordinates a lesson, right?" After he said that, the monkey-like evil dragon shrunk its head and didn't dare to look straight at Lin Yuan. The evil dragon that was killed by Lin Yuan did not have a high cultivation base. At most, it was at the 4th level of the River Lord realm. If it was a demonic beast that grew up on the mainland, it would never dare to stare at a higher level with that kind of malicious gaze. Survival was an instinct engraved in the blood of all living beings. Just like how beasts would scatter their excrement in their territory to make weaker creatures take a detour, only creatures that wanted to die or those with low intelligence would provoke existences that were far stronger than themselves. This rule of survival didn't seem to apply to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. In other words, they blindly believed that they were backed by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even if the demonic beasts without any background were stronger than them, they would still have to be respectful to them. This was the result of the abnormal strategy of the dragon race of the Four Seas. It was the mentality that the members of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas were nurtured by countless subordinates of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. However, this rule didn't apply to Lin Yuan. Therefore, This sin dragon died before it even had a chance to speak. A husky bared its fangs at a tiger and got what it deserved. Lin Yuan, you've gone too far. Ao Sifan glanced at Lin Yuan coldly and said, even if you're a spy raised by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, it's not up to you to discipline. What? Are you tired of being the Blackwater Dragon King of the Northern Frontier and want to join my Sin Dragon camp? If you are willing to join us, not to mention a spy, even if you want to kill one of my trusted subordinates, as long as the reason is right, I will accept it. But now, as an outsider, you have to give me an explanation, don't you think? Don't be pretentious with me. I won't tell you what you shouldn't know. It won't do you any good to know. Lin Yuan looked at Ao Sifan and let out a long breath. He said in a low voice, the problem of the aberrations must be solved. It doesn't only involve the dragon race of the Four Seas. If they are allowed to grow, the entire world will die. You don't want to become one of those weird things, do you? What exactly are the aberrations? Ao Sifan seemed to not understand Lin Yuan's words and asked again with a cold face. Opportunity. A chance for you to rule the dragon race of the Four Seas. The tip of Lin Yuan's tail gently touched the ground, and he said indifferently, not only you, I will publicize the problem of the mutants to the entire endless sea. Believe me, running away will never solve the problem, it will only make the problem bigger and bigger. Either you cooperate with me to get rid of the mutants, and I will help you plan and let you get everything you want, or we will all go our separate ways and play the game together. Harumph. After keeping silent for a while, Ao Sifan snorted and said coldly, you go and hide in the backyard first. I will go out and meet Yazi and Fu Qiu. If what they say is different from what you have expected, you will know what pain is. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had many spies in the evil dragon camp. For example, the second evil dragon who had broken in to report. Thus, the news of Lin Yuan's appearance here couldn't be hidden. Not only did Yazi and Fu Qiu know that Lin Yuan was here, but the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had also received the news. In Ao Sifan's eyes, Lin Yuan was only at the late stage of the River Lord realm. He couldn't even defeat the early Beast King realm warriors. Naturally, he didn't pose any threat. Thus, it thought that Lin Yuan was gambling. He was gambling that Ao Sifan would stand on his side. Once there was a mistake in any part, Lin Yuan would become a prisoner instantly. As you wish. Lin Yuan's face was still expressionless. It seemed that he had a card up his sleeve, but it also seemed that he was crazily staking everything on this one throw. Ao Sifan could not see what Lin Yuan was thinking simply from his expression and look. She could only snort coldly again before walking out of the door. She was ready to meet Yazi and Fu Shi, the two former members of the 9 sons of the Dragon clan who had caused a huge disaster. Chapter 7:18. Lin Yuan turned around and swam, quickly disappearing into the shadows. Be it the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas or the Siren Guild, the entire Endless Sea would not be able to escape this calamity. However, this was also good. There was no need for the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to continue existing. A few clans of the Four Seas dragon race had inherited the name of the primeval world's dragon race, but they were nothing more than dog meat on the banquet table. There could only be one dragon palace in this world. It was the Blackwater Dragon Palace. Lin Yuan was no longer the reincarnator who was not even used to being a demon beast. Even if he did not have the protection of the demon court behind him, Lin Yuan did not care at all. This was because there was an even more terrifying existence behind him. Those hosts that came from all over the universe had many ways to affect the operation of this world. For example, the monster that was completely made of mutated insects and called itself Taotai. Perhaps it was an accident, or perhaps it was some kind of deployment, but it made Lin Yuan understand one thing: he was never alone. On the other side, Cyrus looked at the hundreds of gray-scaled flood dragon people scattered in the willow waters. The corner of its mouth twitched slightly, but it did not know how to describe its current feelings. Only 3 days had passed since Lin Yuan left the Lushur Sea area. The 4 gray-scaled flood dragon people had reproduced on their own and created a tribe of more than 100 people. Such a terrifying reproductive ability even made Cyrus secretly fearful. After the 4 steps of mating, pregnancy, birth, and growth, a gray-scaled flood dragon person would grow into an adult every 4 hours on average. Even though they were weak, probably only at the early stage of the wisdom realm, what truly shocked Cyrus was the terrifying adaptability of this clan. Their reproduction speed became slower and slower, and the growth of their embryos also slowed down. However, the gray-scaled flood dragon people that were born became more and more powerful. The newest batch of gray-scaled flood dragon people even had strength comparable to their parents when they were born. A large number of the first gray-scaled flood dragon people had already died of old age. Apart from Flood Dragon 1 who did not participate in the reproduction, the other 3 gray-scaled flood dragon people had already died of old age. Clearly, this was a clan with a strong reproductive ability but a relatively short lifespan. No, maybe I'm wrong. Cyrus suddenly muttered as it observed the gray-scaled flood dragon people's reproduction. It was not that this clan's lifespan was too short. Instead, this clan used some special method to sacrifice their lifespan in exchange for rapid evolution. Only Flood Dragon 1, the first generation of gray-scaled flood dragon people, did not burn its lifespan. It was guiding the next generation of gray-scaled flood dragon people to begin their cultivation and guide the later generations to worship a supreme god. Cyrus was to ask Flood Dragon 1, to find out. It was to discover that the Flood Dragon 1's god was the Black Jiao previously. How is that possible? Cyrus sneered and mocked, we are all demonic beasts with the ability to cultivate. Naturally, we should know that there are no gods in this world. In the eyes of those mortals who are not qualified to cultivate, we are powerful gods. No. To define to the Flood Dragon to be. To be. Why not? Cyrus retorted with an exaggerated expression, you shouldn't call the Black Flood Dragon a god. You should call it Father. I can feel the same blood flowing in your veins. As for similar examples, don't you know about the noble families of humans and the clans of monsters? Aren't they examples? Flood Dragon 1 stared at Cyrus in silence. The coldness on its face made it look like an ice sculpture. A father and a mother giving birth to a child. Of course, this was the creation of life. It was the reproduction instinct of every clan. However, Lin Yuan's creation was not like that. They were merely creations of Lin Yuan's bloodline, but they were not Lin Yuan's children. This was something Flood Dragon 1 knew since it was born. It was information that God had stuffed into its head when it created it. Forget it. I'm not going to argue with you. Seeing that Flood Dragon 1 did not answer, Cyrus said uninterestedly, you can call the Black Jiao whatever you want, but in Willow Rock Waters, I hope you can restrain your faith a little. Your father. God doesn't have a good reputation in the endless sea. If we want to achieve his goal, we must first deny our relationship with him. Otherwise, we will attract terrifying enemies. You and your clan will all die. Flood Dragon 1's lips moved, but it did not utter a single word. After a moment of silence, it spoke to Cyrus in the common language, I'll restrain my faith in God. Don't worry. As a fervent believer of Lin Yuan, Flood Dragon 1 would never abandon its faith no matter what. If it knew that there was an enemy of God in the world, it would not hesitate to draw its sword. However, things were different now. It had a special mission to fulfill. It had to help its God build a territory. Before that, it could only endure the piety and fervor in its heart and follow Cyrus' command obediently because that was what its God had told it before he left. Cyrus nodded in satisfaction and said in a deep voice, also, after some time, the reconstruction of Willow Rock Waters will be completed. The monsters in the nearby waters will not let go of this chance to invade Willow Rock waters, so they will definitely come looking for trouble. I don't need you to fight the high-level monsters, but I'll leave the cannon fodder-like monsters to you and your clan to deal with. Is that okay? Of course. We'll make sure that no one who invades God's territory will return alive. Flood Dragon 1 nodded. Even in the Endless Sea, where the upper limit of power far exceeded that of the Sky Marshal continent, there were still low-level monsters, although most of them were just cannon fodders. During a war, these cannon fodders were the first to charge into the enemy lines. However, Willow Rock waters had just experienced a disaster, so the weak naturally did not have the chance to survive. Even if Cyrus did not want to use the gray-scaled flood dragon people, it could not find a second force that could do the job. For the gray-scaled flood dragon people, this was a great opportunity to improve themselves. Although they could not directly increase their attributes through killing like Lin Yuan, they could hone their battle experience. When the time was right, Lin Yuan could increase their abilities by injecting the power of incense into them. There were no bottlenecks to speak of. As long as their experience reached the required level, it was not impossible for their cultivation to reach the Demon King realm overnight. If Lin Yuan had that much incense power and his clan had that much battle experience. Chapter 719. Ao Sifin led the sea monkey-like evil dragon out of the gate of the house. At first glance, he saw Yazi sitting on a rock. His face slightly puffed up, but he didn't say anything. He just gazed at Yazi, who was also gazing at him with an expressionless face. They were members of the same generation in the dragon clan of the Four Seas, and they were both prodigies. If Chionyo and Yazi were placed in the current generation of the dragon clan of the Four Seas, they would be at the very top. Unfortunately, just Ao Sifin alone was enough to suffocate them, not to mention that there was another person who possessed greater talent than Ao Sifin back then. Thus, Chionyo and Yazi didn't have the qualification to control the sea area. Although they were heaven's favorites, they could only join the 9 sons of the dragon tribe to fight against the strong enemies to create peace for the dragon tribe in the Four Seas. Today, Chionyo was dead, Yazi had created a big fire, and the other one was missing. Ao Sifin was also put into the evil dragon list. It was fate that made fools of people. Who would have thought that the most prosperous generation of the dragon tribe in the Four Seas would have no one left in the dragon palace of the Four Seas? Evil dragon Ao Sifin, we are here under the order of the dragon king of the West Sea. Kneel down to receive the order. Fu Shi's eyes sparkled. He didn't care that he was in the evil dragon's territory. He stepped forward and shouted. Anyway, Yazi and Fu Shi had created a big trouble. Even the dragon palace of the Four Seas didn't have the guts to protect them. Looking at the entire Endless Sea, the demonic beasts in the outer sea certainly didn't want to accept the members of the dragon tribe. Moreover, the Sea Monster Guild wasn't weak in the outer sea. If the evil dragon tribe didn't want to accept them, they would have to die. However, Fu Shi had always been smart. Before he came, he had thought of many possibilities. Although the evil dragon tribe wasn't weak and they didn't need to fight against the mutant, they still had the power to fight against the Sea Monster Guild. However, they couldn't take the blame for nothing. Luckily, the evil dragon tribe had many spies from the dragon palace of the Four Seas. Moreover, Ao Sifin had been deceived by the spies of the dragon palace of the Four Seas, so he had always respected the dragon palace of the Four Seas. It was one thing for them to directly state their intentions, but it was another for them to hang the banner of the dragon palaces of the Four Seas on the banner of their intentions. Even if Ao Sifin was unwilling, he would not refuse the orders of the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. This was because once he became a Sin Dragon, his descendants would also be called Sin Dragons thousands of years later. They would not be accepted by the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. However, in the eyes of other demons, they were descendants of the dragon clan. It could be said that the benefits of the dragon palaces of the Four Seas would not be shared with them, but if something happened to the dragon palaces of the Four Seas, all the sin dragons would be affected. Therefore, the sin dragons would think of ways to earn merits to show that they had realized their mistakes and were willing to repent. Only those with enough merits would be removed from the register of evil dragons and become a member of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas again. Hua, Ao Sifin chuckled and said with a face full of disdain, "Then, what about the Dragon King's decree? The aberrations are growing stronger day by day. The front line is tight. Even the powerful dragon palaces of the Four Seas cannot transfer manpower. However, I heard that there is a demon beast in the Sky Martial continent that does not respect the dragon clan and calls himself the Blackwater Dragon King. The ancestral dragon does not like him, so he sent a decree from the Dragon God Palace, ordering us to capture the Blackwater Dragon King. Not long ago, the Blackwater Dragon King was tricked into the Endless Sea by the West Sea Dragon King. We went to the Willowstone Sea to capture him, but we did not expect to fall into his trap and be labeled as the one who destroyed the Willowstone Sea. The Dragon King was furious and ordered us to capture the Black Jiao to atone for our sins." Fu Gui put his hands behind his back and said arrogantly, "Ao Sifin, I respect you as a senior, so I specially came here. You should know the weight of the ancestral dragon's decree in the Dragon God Palace, right? If you are willing to help us, the day that the Black Jiao is brought to justice will be the day your names are removed from the register of evil dragons and you return to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas." Ao Sifin was not moved. She still looked at Yazi and said indifferently, "You know that's not what I meant when I asked about the decree. I mean, if you want me to protect you, you have to show me proof, right? You can't just say that you are following the Dragon King's order and you are following the Dragon King's order, right?" Then, Ao Sifin paused and squeezed out a mocking smile on her face. She said coldly, "I can also say that you have caused a great disaster and don't dare to return to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. You want to deceive me and make the evil dragon camp and the Sea Monster Guild start a war." Fu Gui was choked by Ao Sifin's words. Her face was so gloomy that it looked like water was about to drip out. Yazi spat to the side and said with a gloomy face, "Ao Sifin, who do you think you are? You are just an evil dragon. We are following the Dragon King's orders. We are not here to look at your face. We are here to look at the Dragon King's trust. Are you worthy?" Hee hee. Ao Sifin sneered and stepped forward. He walked directly in front of Yazi and said coldly, "What boldness." As expected of Yazi, the second of the 9 sons of the Dragon Clan. "It seems that you haven't wasted these 50 years. Humph, Yazi snorted and had no intention of backing down. It continued to stare at Ao Sifin. In the generation 50 years ago, Ao Sifin and that person appeared out of nowhere and directly stepped on it and Chionyo. They were known as the Supreme Heaven's Pride of the Dragon Clan. They were so famous that even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had to show a kind face. To put it bluntly, it was not that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could not protect them. It was just that after weighing the gains and losses, they felt that there was no need to start a war with the Sea Demon Guild to protect them. If it was Ao Sifin or that person, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would most likely grit their teeth and forcefully suppress this matter. Although it was not the real Yazi, it had the records of the Dragon Clan's secret treasure. It also knew the real Yazi's character very well. Although it was not the kind of person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, it could not be a person who stepped on it for 50 years. Even now, it had fallen into an evil dragon and still had the protection of the Dragon Clan's elders. In the end, this was jealousy. Ao Sifin, how powerful is the Dragon King of the Four Seas? Looking at the entire Endless Sea, is there anyone who dares to impersonate the Dragon King? I have already said before that this time, we came to ask for help. If you don't want to, you can just reject us directly. Why do you have to be so aggressive? Fu Zhi's expression was also not very good. He did not expect that Ao Sifin would dare to act like this. It was as if he did not put the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in his eyes. Not only did the preemptive strike not work, but it also had the opposite effect. Now that Ao Sifin insisted that he wanted to see the West Sea Dragon King's trust, how could they take it out? I wish everyone a new year with no regrets in the past. The new year will still be in full bloom. Chapter 720. What does it have to do with you when the elders are talking? Ao Sifin turned his head and glanced at Fushi contemptuously, then looked at Yazi's face again. Yazi took a deep breath and growled, Ao Sifin, I advise you not to go too far. How can Dragon King's trust be granted so easily? You want to see Dragon King's trust as soon as you open your mouth. That's too much. I want to see Dragon King's trust is too much. Ao Sifin's mocking expression was even more intense. He said in a deep voice, then when you came over, you wanted my evil dragon camp to clean up your mess, take the blame, and even help you to make enemies with that black Jiao. What is this called? Paw. It was almost in a flash. Ao Sifin and Yazi had already punched each other. Ao Sifin took 3 steps back, but Yazi didn't move at all. The reef he was sitting on cracked inch by inch. In the blink of an eye, it turned into powder and drifted away with the undercurrent at the bottom of the sea. For a moment, it was impossible to tell who was superior between the two. However, even so, it still made Fu Zhu, who was at the side, suck in a breath of cold air. Long Josie was one of the top combatants in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even if he didn't go on missions, the resources he usually enjoyed were the best in the entire Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Ao Sifin was an evil dragon. Although it had a great reputation in the past 50 years, it could only survive in the gaps between the various sea demon clans. Naturally, it couldn't manage a sea region that produced spiritual items. In addition, it had to support the evil dragons under its command. It probably had to fork out a lot of its own cultivation resources. Aptitude was the factor that determined whether a monster or a cultivator could reach a certain level, but it was definitely not the only factor. Abundant spiritual items were the most important thing. With the gap of 50 years of resources between the two, Yazi's cultivation progress in a day was probably more than 10 times that of Ao Sifin. But in that punch just now, both sides were actually evenly matched. What kind of terrifying aptitude was this? You've made some progress. You didn't waste the resources of the Dragon Palace. Ao Sifin wasn't annoyed. He calmly withdrew his fist and sneered, however, I thought you had the capital to stand proudly in the world after all these years. It turns out that you're just a so-so. So, you should treat me the same way you treated me 50 years ago. Do you understand? On what basis? Yazi's face was full of resistance, but he also retracted his fist and asked in a stern voice. Because I am stronger than you. Ao Sifin also responded sternly, but his vertical pupils were filled with coldness. Those who were observant would be able to see that although Ao Sifin had taken 3 steps back, her fist was still intact. On the other hand, although Yazi did not move at all, as if all the force had been transferred to the reef under it, its fist was constantly trembling. One could even vaguely see the blood splashing out when its skin and flesh were torn open. However, the dragon's physique was tyrannical, and the injury was instantly healed. Thus, it did not reveal a bloody fist with torn skin and flesh. So, it wasn't a tie. Fu Qian's expression changed slightly, and he sighed in his heart. Other than Ao Sifin taking the initiative to protect him, Fu Xi even considered activating the spies of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to control Ao Sifin and take away his authority to control the evil dragon camp. However, such a scheme could only be dismissed with a smile at this moment. It was not difficult to control the evil dragon camp. The spies of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could do it, but the prerequisite was to capture Ao Sifin. Otherwise, with Ao Sifin's prestige, he could make those evil dragons who did not belong to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to have evil intentions. By then, there would be another bloody battle. Perhaps the Sea Monster Guild, the Outer Sea Monsters, and the subordinates of the Dragon Palace would all help Sifin to completely crush the power of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Yazi's face twitched slightly. After pondering for a moment, he gritted his teeth and said, "Please, save us." A satisfied look flashed across Sifin's face as soon as she finished speaking. Although the Sea Monster Guild is powerful, it is also a loose organization. It is not difficult to capture you too. As long as we pay a certain amount of benefits, we can hire a large number of experts to hunt you down. However, it is difficult for the Sea Monster Guild to bear the cost of waging a war with the evil dragon camp. So, if I help you, you will be safe. As long as you don't seek death and stay in the territory of the evil dragon camp, they can't do anything to you. Sifin grinned and said, "Everything in this world comes with a price. The Sea Monster Guild is afraid of me, so they will put pressure on me, which will make the situation of the evil dragon camp more difficult. So, I am very curious. What kind of bargaining chips do you have in your hands? Why do you have the confidence to let me protect you?" Yazi kept silent and took half a step back. In terms of fighting power, he could easily crush Fu Chu. However, he was not good at this kind of thing that required using his brain. Fu Chu pondered for a moment and looked around. Seeing more and more sea monsters gathering, he coughed to refresh himself and said softly, "We have enough bargaining chips. However, this is a serious matter. Let's go into the yard and talk. We don't want the walls to have ears and ruin our plan. Isn't it just that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas can't resist the pressure of the mutant, so you want to go to the Sky Marshal continent? You want all the beasts in the Endless Sea to be your barrier to stop the mutant while you hide somewhere to recuperate. You want to take back your territory in the Endless Sea. If you dare to do that, why are you afraid of others talking about it? You want to capture this king and use the forces in the northern frontier to get a territory in the Sky Marshal continent for the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Originally, you didn't want to bring the evil dragon camp. But now, because you can't send people, you have to borrow the evil dragon camp's power. That's why you changed your face and came here." Lin Yuan's lazy voice arose. He mocked, "Aren't the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas strong? Why don't you have your arrogant aura like before, asking for this king's treasure? Black Jiao, you dare to hide here?" Yazi suddenly roared and stared at Lin Yuan, who appeared behind Sifin. If it wasn't for the news of Lin Yuan's sudden appearance, it wouldn't have led Long Josie to the Willow Stone Sea. In the end, it was schemed against by Cyrus. Now, it couldn't find a place to stay in the Endless Sea. Now, Lin Yuan dared to appear in front of it. Kill. Boundless killing intent leaked out. Lin Yuan sneered as if he didn't care at all. Boom. An aura that wasn't inferior to Yazi's suddenly burst out from Sifin's body. "Blackwater Dragon King is my honored guest. Him coming to my residence as a guest is giving me, Sifin, face. How can I allow you to be so presumptuous? It seems that the battle back then didn't scare the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, right?" Sifin was furious. His eyes were also bloodshot as he stared at Yazi fiercely. Chapter 721. The hatred emitted from Sifin's body was not the slightest bit inferior to Yazi. Yazi just wanted to vent its anger on Lin Yuan. No matter what, it was a beast that had lived for more than 70 years. Although it hadn't learned the cunning of human beings, it had experienced a lot. Of course, it wouldn't look at everything in this world as an ignorant person. How long had Black Jiao been in the Endless Sea? How long had it been since he came out? How long had Cyrus concealed its identity? The two of them could have met and colluded, but before that, they couldn't have known each other. Thus, Cyrus' plan in the Willowstone Sea was aimed at the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. Its purpose was to provoke the war between the Sea Monster Guild and the dragon palaces of the Four Seas. Lin Yuan was just an important supporting role in this drama. Of course, there was no irreconcilable hatred. Even if there was, it was aimed at Cyrus. However, Ao Sifen's resentment was aimed at the dragon palaces of the four seas. What was the cruelest thing in the world? It was to give others hope and then crush it with your own hands. 36 years ago, Ao Sifen became famous in one battle. He led the evil dragons to defeat the dragon palace of the four seas and took over the territory of the evil dragon camp. The evil dragon camp didn't wander around the sea area like rootless duckweeds anymore. Although the dragon palace of the four seas had been planting spies in the evil dragon camp and cultivating the root of the disaster, no one dared to say that the dragon palace of the four seas could ignore Ao Sifen's anger and start another war with him. In fact, for so many years, the dragon palaces of the four seas had always been kind to Ao Sifen. They didn't dare to have a dispute with him. They only dared to use a soft knife to cut off his flesh. Ao Sifen was a hero of a generation, so he could see through this. However, it was just like Song Jiang in the later period of the water margin. Ao Sifen clearly understood that although the evil dragon camp was strong, they were still rootless duckweeds. Their real position in the endless sea wasn't even comparable to some of the stronger species of the dragon palaces. That was why Ao Sifen sat and watched the dragon palaces of the four seas trying to recruit and assimilate the evil dragon's camp. He didn't mention any small disputes. He wanted to return to the dragon palaces of the four seas one day and use his own ideas to change the dragon palaces of the four seas. At least, he wanted the dragon palaces of the four seas to no longer despise the beasts without the dragon bloodline. He wanted to unify the endless sea. However, he did not expect his sincerity to be so laughable in the eyes of the dragon palace of the four seas. Unknowingly, it and its evil dragon faction had become abandoned pawns in the eyes of the dragon palace of the four seas. Laughable, lamentable, lamentable. Black Zhao, what nonsense are you talking about? Fu Gao shouted and said coldly, "You are the blood descendant of the dragon race of the four seas, yet you don't want to be the ancestor of the dragon race. How dare you say that the dragon race is plotting to steal your treasure? Do you know how powerful the dragon palace of the four seas is? What you have is nothing but a laughable toy in our eyes." At this moment, Fu Su hated Lin Yuan to the core. This black arrow simply did not choose his words carefully and did not even care about the consequences. Was the aberrant a topic that could be made public? To put it bluntly, even the powerful dragon palace of the four seas was defeated by the aberrant. They had no choice but to consider entering the Tianwu continent to avoid the aberrant's sharp edge. However, this was an internal matter of the dragon palace of the four seas and could not be made public. Once the other demonic beasts in the endless sea discovered the terror of the aberrant, the dragon palace of the four seas would be put on fire. At that time, all the escape routes of the dragon palace of the four seas would be blocked. The entire dragon race of the four seas would have to fight the aberrant to the death. Even if they won, the dragon race of the four seas would be reduced to the lowest level of power in the Tianwu continent for a long time in the future. They might not even be comparable to the current northern frontier. More importantly, if Black Zhao was willing to cooperate with the dragon palace of the four seas, both sides could return to the Tianwu continent together. Although the northern frontier would definitely be angered by the powers of the Tianwu continent, they could also gain the goodwill of the dragon race of the four seas. Both sides working together might not necessarily lead to death. However, if these words were to be spread, before the chaos of the aberrant was resolved, Black Zhao himself would not be able to return to the Tianwu continent. This was King courting death. He even wanted to drag the dragon palace of the four seas down with him. Since all the seniors are paying attention to this, I will say these few words to fulfill my responsibility as a dragon bloodline demonic beast. I will say what the dragon palace of the four seas does not dare to say. At the same time, I will also stop the dragon palace of the four seas from thinking of escaping. Although I know the details of the aberrant, it is not convenient for me to tell you. The only thing I can say is that the aberrant's original intention is not to become the new overlord of the endless sea. They are plotting to conquer the entire world. If the dragon palace of the four seas retreats, none of you will be able to escape the fate of becoming monsters today. And even if the dragon palace of the four seas can escape to the Tianwu continent and be accepted by the powers of the Tianwu continent, they will not be able to escape the attacks of the aberrant. The longer these monsters are eliminated, the greater the danger. After today, I hope that all of you will have a better understanding of the aberrant. Do not think that just because you do not participate in the war against the aberrant, you will be able to take a step further under their rule or maintain your current life. If you do not believe my words, you can send people to the front lines of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to take a look and ask if this is the case. Lin Yuan bowed his head and said in a sincere tone, as long as the hidden danger of the aberrant is not eliminated, Black Zhao will not leave the endless sea. I hope that all of you seniors can bear witness to this. The demon beasts of the endless sea were not fools. Although the Sea Demon Guild was an idle organization, this kind of idleness also gave them a very powerful source of information. The news of Yazi and Fu Shi's appearance today would definitely not be hidden from the Sea Demon Guild, and even more so from the experts of the Sea Demon Guild who were paying attention to this matter. Although on the surface it was Yazi, Fu Shi, Ao Sifin, and Lin Yuan who were here, in the dark, who knew how many spies of the powers were hidden. Some of the experts might even come to a place not far from here to secretly investigate. He wanted to make this matter big, he wanted to stir up this pot of water. With his own strength, it was impossible to fight against the old ruler of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Even if he forcefully pulled the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, they might not be the opponent of the other party. He could only pull all the demon beasts of the Endless Sea onto the warship, only then could he guarantee a 50% chance of winning this war. In addition, the reconstruction of the Willowstone Sea area was about to be completed. The other sea demon forces would not let go of this fat meat. He did not need to provide any resources, and he did not need to fight against the super strong demon beasts. How could the demon beasts refuse? Making this matter big and attracting the attention of the Endless Sea, it could also share some of the pressure of the Willowstone Sea area. Otherwise, before this nail of his could enter the Endless Sea, it would be a wedding dress for the other sea demon forces. Chapter 722. Lin Yuan's words made many sea demons who were paying attention change their expressions. Although the dragon clan of the Four Seas had been hiding the matter of the aberrant, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Although some people did not receive accurate first-hand information, they knew that the aberrant was very terrifying. They could even make the dragon clan of the Four Seas, who had always considered themselves the overlords of the Endless Sea, willingly give up their territory. Not only were the front lines retreating again and again, more and more sea demons were rushing to the battlefield. However, the aberrant's ferocity was only directed at the dragon clan of the Four Seas. After all, in order to safely evacuate the Endless Sea, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas had always been on guard and did not want other sea demon clans to know about the aberrant. Therefore, for most sea demons, the war between the aberrant and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was just two huge forces fighting for territory. Even if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was the loser in the end, what did that have to do with them? A long, long time ago, the overlord of the Endless Sea was the Whale Clan. After the Gate of Heaven opened, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas suddenly became the top of the food chain in the Endless Sea and became an overlord. Until today, as more and more sea demons appeared among the outer sea demons, there was constant friction between the two sides. There was also a sea demon guild that had quietly risen in the deep sea and had become a behemoth that even the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas had to avoid. In addition, over the years, the various dragon palaces had multiplied and produced many sea demons. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could no longer maintain its position as the overlord, resulting in the current awkward situation. However, as long as the dragon palace of the four seas existed, the sea demon clans in the endless sea would not dare to overstep their boundaries. If the aberrant were more powerful than the dragon palace of the four seas, then the sea demons of the endless sea would not make any futile efforts to resist. After all, they had been ruled for so many years, so there was no harm in changing the ruler. However, now that they heard Lin Yuan's words, it had a completely different meaning. The aberrant's goal was never to compete with the dragon palace of the four seas for the endless sea. Their goal was to destroy the entire world. They wanted to turn all the creatures in the world into aberrant monsters. This king's words are all true. If there's even half a sentence of falsehood, I'm willing to be skinned and have my tendons pulled out, and my soul and soul destroyed. Seeing that the surrounding demonic beasts didn't respond, Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and emphasized again. Playing around was one thing, but when the system got serious, it was no joke. Although Lin Yuan didn't know what the spiritual sense he used to control the puppet's body had experienced, he was certain that the Great Old Ones had touched the system's reverse scale. The system was serious about eliminating these monsters. It had even mobilized all the hosts under its command, as if it was not going to leave a place for the Great Old Ones in the myriad worlds. Even Lin Yuan could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. In this mission, it was likely that quite a few hosts would be directly kicked out by the system, and from then on, they would be reduced to a member of an ordinary monster clan. They would never be able to encounter such a huge opportunity again in their lifetime. Even if there was a day when the storm would surge in the future, they would no longer have the slightest connection with them. They might not even have the qualifications to be a spectator. How sad was that? Lin Yuan wasn't willing to be such a pathetic existence. Therefore, he had to complete the mission that the system had mobilized all the hosts to carry out. In addition, other than the system, the demonic beasts of the endless sea were also a big problem. They wouldn't choose to pretend to be deaf and mute after knowing about Lin Yuan's existence. After all, the dragon palace of the four seas with Lin Yuan in hand was completely different from the previous dragon palace of the four seas. If the dragon palace of the four seas persuaded Lin Yuan to cooperate, they could withdraw from the endless sea at any time and move the headquarters of the dragon clan of the four seas to the Sky Marshal continent. However, without Lin Yuan to play a neutral role, not to mention the demonic beasts of the Hingduan mountain range who would not tolerate the demonic beasts of the ocean demonic beasts fighting for territory, even the top experts of the human race would not sit idly by. If Lin Yuan did not express his stance, he would soon die an unnatural death. Previously, when they did not know about the dangers of the aberrant, the demonic beasts of the endless sea only hoped to delay the dragon clan of the four seas as much as possible and let the aberrant heavily injure the dragon clan of the four seas so that they could divide and devour them. Firstly, they could avenge the enmity of being enslaved for many years, and secondly, they could strengthen their own clan's power. Now that they knew the danger of the aberrations, they would not let the dragon clan of the four seas leave the endless sea. After all, the dragon clan of the four seas had been fighting the aberrations all this time. Although they seemed to have suffered heavy casualties, they were barely able to stabilize the situation. It was obvious that they had researched a set of tactics to deal with the aberrations. If the dragon clan of the four seas were to run away and let them deal with the aberrations in an ignorant state, who knew what kind of price they would have to pay? Therefore, Lin Yuan had to express his stance and stand on the side of the endless sea's demonic beasts. He had to keep the dragon palace of the four seas to deal with the aberrations. As for the rage of the dragon palace of the four seas, the demonic beasts of the endless sea would naturally protect him. Why? Now, in the entire endless sea, besides the dragon clan of the four seas, Lin Yuan was the only one who understood the aberrations. Just like how they had cheated the dragon clan of the four seas, once the opportunity came, the dragon clan of the four seas would definitely think of a way to get back at them. If he closed his eyes and listened to the orders of the dragon clan of the four seas, he wouldn't even know how he died. Black Jiao. You've gone too far. Yazi's eyes were crimson red, and he was obviously furious. Even when he saw Ao Sifin, who had suppressed him since birth, and was forced to lower his head and beg for peace, Yazi didn't show a look of anger. But at this moment, after Lin Yuan spoke, the anger in Yazi's heart burned fiercely. As the second son of the Dragon Clan and a senior member of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, Yazi had access to countless secrets. Except for the several ancestral dragons and the previous Dragon King of the Four Seas, no one knew more details than Yazi. Therefore, from the moment Lin Yuan chose to reveal the truth, Yazi knew that the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas was finished. Today, Lin Yuan's words would spread to the entire Endless Sea at an unusually fast speed. At that time, although the Endless Sea's demonic beasts would unite to resist the invasion of the aberrations, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would be firmly tied to the war chariot. No matter the direction of the war, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would not have a good ending. This Black Jiao, no. This guy is not the Black Jiao at all. At this moment, Lin Yuan was like a poisonous snake in the eyes of Yazi, slowly piercing his poisonous fangs into the body of the behemoth called the Dragon Race of the Four Seas, injecting a lethal amount of venom into it little by little. But it couldn't stop it. It didn't even need to try to know that once it stopped Lin Yuan from telling the truth, the demonic beasts hiding nearby would definitely swarm over and directly tear it apart. Chapter 723. Ao Sifin's figure moved slightly, and he changed his direction without changing his expression. He blocked the path that Yazi must pass through to rush to Lin Yuan. His aura was firmly locked on Yazi. It seemed that as long as Yazi dared to act rashly, he would brazenly attack. As an outsider and an abandoned existence, Ao Sifin had always played the role of a supporting role in this game. It didn't even know where this game came from, what role Lin Yuan played in it, and what his purpose was. But it didn't matter. From the moment it knew the truth, Ao Sifin's heart of sincerity towards the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had already died. Right now, it only wanted to be responsible for itself, for the evil dragons under its command. As for what would happen to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in the future, it was none of its business as an abandoned child. Perhaps Lin Yuan was right. The current Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was indeed rotten to the bone, and the stubborn disease was difficult to eradicate. It had to experience a destructive blow before it could be broken and rebuilt, and once again show the true spirit of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, instead of living in a self-made dream to deceive itself. I repeat, the Black Jiao is my guest. Ao Sifin coldly stared at Yazi. Its vertical pupils were filled with coldness, and its voice was as shrill as a ghost. If you dare to touch the Black Jiao, I, Ao Sifin, will give up the 30 years of bitter cultivation and kill you on the spot. Fu Jian, I will delay Ao Sifin, you go and kill that Black Jiao. Yazi's eyes were still red, as if it wasn't the one who lowered its head to beg for peace. With a fierce tone, it strode forward and faced Ao Sifin head-on. Those who were good at fighting were decisive. For the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, Lin Yuan was a way to survive, but that was the Lin Yuan of the past. Now, Lin Yuan's identity could no longer be concealed in the Endless Sea. Who knew how many sea demon experts were hiding in the dark, watching his every move? Before the aberration was completely eradicated, if Lin Yuan had any thoughts of returning to the Tianwu continent, he would immediately be killed by the sea demon experts. On top of that, the Dragon King of the West Sea had yet to obtain the dragonization technique from Lin Yuan. Even though he had imprisoned Lin Yuan, he had failed to obtain it. Instead, he had brought trouble upon himself. Therefore, Lin Yuan's value was already very low. It could even be said that he was better than nothing. In that case, there was no need for Lin Yuan to exist. Although there was no evidence, Yazi's intuition was telling him that Lin Yuan's understanding of the aberration might be much more than the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas that fought the aberration day and night. It just didn't want to say it out loud. Since the dragon clan of the Four Seas was forcefully tied to the war chariot by Lin Yuan, then they had to choose a good position. The fewer people like Lin Yuan who knew, the higher the status of the dragon palace of the Four Seas, and the safer the members of the dragon clan of the Four Seas would be. Ha! Hearing Yizi's low roar, Lin Yuan had no intention of retreating. He even sneered. That arrogant look was not something that could be casually faked. You bastard, you still dare to laugh. Fu Zi, who was originally standing to the side, was also angered by Lin Yuan's attitude. He immediately pointed his claws at Lin Yuan and roared sternly. Why aren't you laughing? Don't you think it's funny that you're overestimating yourself? Lin Yuan said with a smile, his tone mixed with ridicule and ridicule. This guy, Ao Siphon's expression changed several times. Lin Yuan was clearly fanning the flames. His goal was to provoke Yizi and Fu Zi to attack. But why was it like this? It was very obvious, but why did Yizi and Fu Zi not seem to notice it? Instead, they were really angered by Lin Yuan's sudden arrogance and ridicule. What was Lin Yuan's goal? To make it kill Yizi and completely cut off the possibility of peace between the evil dragon camp and the dragon palace of the Four Seas? Or was he setting up a trap to attract some moths to the flame and let more forces be involved in this mess? Thinking of this, Ao Siphon's face showed a troubled expression. Although he was no longer loyal to the dragon palace of the Four Seas, he couldn't deny that he was born in the dragon palace of the Four Seas. Seeing his own people in trouble, he really couldn't be ruthless. However, other than his own people in the dragon palace of the Four Seas, he still had a group of brothers under his command who were waiting for him to lead the way. If he abandoned the dragon clan of the Four Seas and wholeheartedly joined Lin Yuan, then it was very important to guess his attitude. It was even directly related to whether Lin Yuan's next actions would be affected or not. Unknowingly, Ao Siphon had already put himself in the position of a chess piece and considered himself a subordinate of Lin Yuan. Although his strength and prestige far surpassed Lin Yuan's, Ao Siphon didn't seem to realize this at all. Fu Zi, I advise you to stop. The smile on Lin Yuan's face disappeared, and he said coldly, It is said in the endless sea that Fu Zi, one of the 9 sons of the dragon clan, is gentle and good at strategizing. However, after seeing you today, I realize that it's just bullshit. If an idiot like you can call yourself a strategist, then all the people in the world who rely on their intelligence to make a living will be so angry that they will chop you into minced meat. Fu Zi didn't seem to hear Lin Yuan's warning at all. He still stepped closer to Lin Yuan, and his vertical pupils flashed with killing intent. He looked like he wouldn't stop until he killed Lin Yuan. He knew that there were many sea demon experts who were paying attention to this place. But, so what? The strength of those sea demon experts was about the same as him. Most of them were even weaker than him. Not to mention that it would take some time for them to rush over, even if they all gathered here. As long as Ao Siphon didn't interfere, Fu Zi was confident that he could kill Lin Yuan. Your brain is a good thing. Unfortunately, you don't have it. Seeing that Fu Zi didn't have the slightest intention to stop, Lin Yuan shook his head gently, and his face regained his playful expression. Where was this place? The headquarters of the evil dragon camp. Under the premise of offending the dragon palace of the Four Seas, the evil dragons dared to set up a base, so they naturally had enough force to protect this mansion. At least, they could deal with the surprise attack of the dragon palace of the Four Seas calmly. Would Ao Siphon be the only one guarding this place? Did they really think that the 8 distresses in the evil dragon camp, who were as famous as the 9 sons of the dragon clan, were just decorations? After knowing the cause and effect, and with Ao Siphon's declaration, even if these evil dragons were the spies of the dragon palace of the Four Seas, at this moment, they gave up on the dragon palace of the Four Seas. After all, no one would be loyal to an existence that would always abandon them. Unless the other party had done them a great favor that they had to repay. However, that kind of story obviously wouldn't happen to the dragon clan, who considered themselves as nobles. They not only looked down on demonic beasts without dragon bloodline, but also demonic beasts with dragon bloodline whose bloodline purity wasn't high. In such a big environment, it would be good if the dragon clan of the Four Seas didn't become enemies with each other. How could there be a bond between them? Chapter 724. Black Jiao, give me your life. Fu Zi roared as he quickened his pace, almost jogging, as if he was worried that Lin Yuan would slip away under his nose. You are really courting death. A cold light flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. Almost at the moment when Fu Zi opened his mouth, two black shadows rushed out of the house one after the other, directly facing Fu Zi, who was gradually revealing his monster body. The three of them instantly fought together, fighting back and forth. Compared to the stalemate between Ao Sifin and Yazi, it was naturally much more pleasing to the eye. Even though the two evil dragons who went out to fight were not as strong as negative in all aspects, they looked very similar, as if they were brothers born from the same mother. They cooperated with each other quite well, and when they raised their hands, there was a kind of joint attack that rose fiercely. They were actually able to fight on equal grounds with Negative, who had been blinded by anger and had gone all out. The evil dragon camp and the dragon clan of the Four Seas were fighting. Looking at the messy battlefield in front of him, Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed with light. The next moment, another three auras skyrocketed. They were three Monster King realm existences. Lin Yuan took a closer look and immediately realized that the other party was the members of Long Josie who had participated in the arrest of him. Obviously, they had arrived here early, but they did not show up immediately. They planned to set up an ambush. Now that Lin Yuan had sent Ao Sifin and the monster brothers to stop Yazi and Fu Zi, the remaining three dragon clan members naturally could not sit still. Their figures flew over, wanting to help Yazi and Fu Zi, but before they could take a few steps, they were stopped by a group of monsters whose average strength was around the Monster King realm, but there was no lack of monsters at the River Lord realm. The Sea Monster Guild also intervened. The light in Lin Yuan's eyes was even brighter. Although there might be some monsters in the Endless Sea who wanted to protect him, there were actually not many who had the courage to directly put it into practice, and among them, only the Sea Monster Guild dared to attack the members of the Dragon Clan without any scruples. The two major forces in the Endless Sea were finally facing each other. If the evil Dragon Camp, a special force that wasn't even a first-rate force, or a second-rate one, joined the fight, the dragon race of the Four Seas would have to shed a layer of skin. When this matter is over, Lin Yuan will eventually return to the northern region. At that time, it can be said that he will take over the territory of the Shenwu dynasty. However, at that time, Lin Yuan will need to pay a huge amount of manpower and material resources to clean up the remaining demons and the group of disciples of the demon sect who claim to be the hidden sect. It is impossible to be distracted for a short time. Lin Yuan couldn't accept the fact that the Ocean Yao beasts were like nomadic clans, and they always wanted to go ashore to take whatever they lacked. He wasn't willing to accept this either. Therefore, he had to teach these guys a lesson. 10 minutes later. Willow Rock Seas, Domain Master's Manor. Jiao Yi, who was wearing an underwater mineral armor, suddenly changed his expression and kept nodding. At the same time, he sent a message to Cyrus with a complicated expression. Our God has just sent a new decree. The Endless Sea is in chaos, and the Sea Monster Guild has even openly attacked the members of the Dragon Clan. There will definitely be a battle between the two sides. Our God wants us to be prepared and use this opportunity to scheme for everything that is valuable to us. Jiao Yi, who was complaining about the crude mineral armor and even calling it armor, suddenly changed his expression and turned to look at Cyrus with an indifferent expression. Cyrus was slightly stunned. It had been observing the gray-scaled flood dragon person for a while. Although it didn't know how the Black Jiao did it, he could indeed contact Jiao Yi remotely. However, most of the time, it was Jiao Yi reporting information about the Willow Rock Seas and the grayscaled flood dragon person to Lin Yuan, and Lin Yuan would occasionally give some suggestions. However, this time, Lin Yuan took the initiative to send a message to Jiao Yi. That meant, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and the Sea Monster Guild had really made a move. Although all of this was within Cyrus's calculations, it wasn't confident about the result. If it was 100 or 200 years ago, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would definitely fight the Sea Monster Guild head-on. However, now, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas' spine had been broken by the aberrations, and they even had to give up the territories in the endless sea that they had been operating for a long time. How could they fall out with the Sea Monster Guild over a few replaceable members of the Dragon Clan? Could it be that those Dragon Clan members were some kind of incredible existence? The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would rather start a war on two fronts than give up on them to appease the Sea Monster Guild. Cyrus reached out to touch its smooth and round chin, and a sharp light flashed in its eyes. It said in a deep voice, "Contact Black Jiao and ask him about the situation over there. When will the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and the Sea Monster Guild start fighting? If there's still time, I can think of a way to lure the sea monsters into the trap and defeat the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in one fell swoop." The Sea Monster Guild has already made a move on the members of the Dragon Clan. The evil dragon camp is also on our side under my god's plan. I heard that many sea monster clans and dragon palaces have taken the opportunity to declare independence from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and become independent forces. Once the war starts, these independent forces won't just stand by and watch the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas get through this crisis. They will definitely send troops to help. First Flood Dragon fiddled with the armor on his body and said indifferently, "Cyrus, if you have any more tricks up your sleeve, you'd better use them as soon as possible. Otherwise, when I show my might, you won't have much of a role in this show." This sentence could be said to have scratched Cyrus's itch. As a notorious villain in the Endless Sea, what Cyrus wanted was nothing more than a name. Either his name would go down in history or his name would go down in infamy. Although Lin Yuan was in the limelight, the fact that the Endless Sea could have such a situation today was indeed due to its planning and layout. It borrowed Lin Yuan's influence to make Long Josie bear the blame for the destruction of the Willowstone Sea area. However, no one knew about this matter except for Lin Yuan, and it was not stupid enough to explain it to other monsters. Wouldn't that be destroying the great situation that it had created? Now that the situation was turbulent, if it did not show its name now, this big show that it had directed would have nothing to do with it at all. "I'll go and contact the demonic beasts from the outer sea." Cyrus's eyes lit up. He stood up and walked toward his residence with a smile. The demonic beasts from the outer sea, Cyrus, have all joined the plan. Congratulations, my god. The situation is set. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is in danger. Even though Lin Yuan could not see it, Jiao Yi still bowed respectfully and prayed in his heart. Although it had not been long since they were born, when they were created, the system had already stuffed a large amount of knowledge and memories into the first batch of Flood Dragon people. With Lin Yuan's constant guidance and a genius like Cyrus by his side, Jiao Yi grew very quickly. He was no longer the minion that could only follow Lin Yuan's orders. Chapter 725. Two flowers bloomed, one on each side. His gaze returned to Lin Yuan's side. The monster brothers and Fu Zhu were still fighting. The other three Dragon Josie members were intercepted by the Siren Guild. Everything was still under control. Nothing unexpected happened. Furthermore, the number of monster beasts participating in the battle against the Dragon Josie was increasing. It was obvious that the Siren Guild was not the only one contributing. Who would have thought that today's changes were all caused by Lin Yuan, who had not even reached the Monster King realm? Cyrus had used his own plans to change the situation. There was no other way. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas must be destroyed. Although the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had the bloodline of the Dragon clan and had connections with the ancient demon court, to Lin Yuan, they were not close. They were not even as close as the demonized black tortoise that sealed itself in the forbidden area of the northern frontier's underwater secret realm. Since the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas coveted his things, why couldn't he covet their territories? It was not that he did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. It was just that although the gray-scaled flood dragon person was an amphibious species, it was not suitable for the Hingduan mountain range that was surrounded by forests. As a species that was not considered strong to begin with, if the gray-scaled flood dragon person entered the Hingduan mountain range and lost its geographical advantage, it would not be of any help to Lin Yuan. Instead, it would become a member of the menu of other monster beasts. He spent a large amount of incense power to create a clan. He could not possibly send them to other monster beasts, right? Of course, there were tribes in the Hingduan mountain range that were not as good as the gray-scaled flood dragon person. For example, the mountain-shaking ape tribe that was loyal to Lin Yuan. However, they had the support of their ancestor. Strictly speaking, the mountain-shaking ape bloodline was a species derived from the Sacred Heart Ape King, Suhebru. It was fine to kill one or two of them. However, if you exterminated the mountain-shaking ape tribe, you would be declaring that you would not rest until you were dead. However, who was behind the gray-scaled flood dragon person? It was Lin Yuan. Right now, he was undoubtedly in an awkward position in the Hingduan mountain range. Firstly, the demonic beasts in the Hingduan mountain range had to rely on the Northern Region Chamber of Commerce under his command to live a better life. Secondly, he was the strongest contender to be the next beast master of the Hingduan mountain range. Therefore, the Hingduan mountain range could watch as Lin Yuan grew stronger in the northern frontier. They even tried their best to provide Lin Yuan with convenience. However, this didn't mean that the demon beasts that had participated in the competition for the position of beast master would watch Lin Yuan's power and influence in the Hingduan mountain range increase again. In that case, the only place suitable for the gray-scaled flood dragon people to live and reproduce was the endless sea. At the very least, they possessed the pure bloodline of the water flood dragon. Naturally, they would be taken care of by the sin dragon or other dragon bloodline Yao beasts. They would not be wiped out directly. However, before this nail pierced in, Lin Yuan had to sweep the endless sea aside. Even if he couldn't do it with his own strength, he had to borrow the momentum to do it. In Lin Yuan's mind, he had a rough idea of how to do it. He would refer to the Great Qing dynasty's way of doing things, using slaves to control slaves. In his previous life, as a Han Chinese, Lin Yuan didn't have a good impression of the Qing dynasty. If it wasn't for the Qing dynasty sealing off their country and forbidding the development of firearms from the Great Ming dynasty, how would it have caused the series of tragedies that followed? Before the Great Qing dynasty, which one of them wasn't at the top of the world? Even the Meng Yuan dynasty, which wasn't ruled by Han Chinese, was a powerful existence that had once swept across the Eurasian continent. However, if one ignored the bad side and only looked at the schemes of the emperor, the Qing dynasty was indeed a master. They used the dirty method of using slaves to control slaves. Instead, it made the enslaved people less dissatisfied with the Qing dynasty. Instead, they fought to become the slave that ruled over the other slaves. Although this move was self-destructive, it was still a good move. In a sense, this move helped the Qing dynasty avoid the old path that the Meng Yuan dynasty had taken. Towards the forces under their rule, such as the aristocratic families, they had a simple and crude word: kill. In the beginning, there would be resistance. However, just like today's northern frontier, as long as they survived the backlash, they could do whatever they wanted. Therefore, in the later period of the Qing dynasty, the imperial power could be said to be supreme. Those aristocratic families who were once arrogant had their backs broken. In other words, after the Han dynasty, they changed from the backbone of the Han dynasty to the parasites of the Han dynasty. They only thought about their own family's interests. They manipulated the changes of the imperial power, and when they went out on expeditions, they became the hindrance of the dynasty. The Qing dynasty's massacre had taught these aristocratic families the simplest way to survive: kowtow more and talk less. In Lin Yuan's hands, this move was used in the Endless Sea. Lin Yuan didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. After all, the one who would be affected in the end wouldn't be him. Although the matter of the Great Old Ones had been exposed by Lin Yuan, these sea demons certainly wouldn't easily believe Lin Yuan. They would each use their own forces to investigate this matter and see if it was really as Lin Yuan said. After all, although Lin Yuan was an outsider, he was still considered to have the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. If they blindly believed in Lin Yuan, they would have to worry about being used as a knife by the Dragon Palace. During this period, although the sea demon experts would be responsible for Lin Yuan's safety, they wouldn't do their best. However, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, who knew what the aberrant was, would never let go of someone like Lin Yuan. Before the various forces investigated the situation of the Great Old Ones, the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas would spare no effort to assassinate Lin Yuan to ensure that the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas had absolute control of the aberrant. Seeing that Fu Qiu was entangled by the demon brothers, Yazi fiercely ground its teeth and said in a deep voice, "Ao Sifin, you're from the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Are you going to watch this Black Jiao destroy the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas?" Yazi, from now on, the evil dragon is the evil dragon, and the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas is the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Ao Sifin sneered. It talked about friendship with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, but the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas abandoned it. Now that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was in trouble, they wanted to play the friendship card. Did they really think it was a fool? Yazi, I won't argue with you. For the sake of our friendship in the past, if you retreat now, I can pretend that you never came here today. Get lost. Ao Sifin stared coldly at Yazi. Yazi almost laughed out of anger. Now that Lin Yuan had exposed the matter of the mutant, the Sea Demon Guild had directly attacked Long Josie. He didn't know how many Sea Demon powerhouses were hiding nearby, waiting to take his head to the Sea Demon Guild in exchange for a reward. If the power of the evil dragon camp couldn't protect him, he would die today. Leave. Go where? Can't ask for it, can't resent it. Are you still not going to make a move? Yazi ground its teeth, and the sound of its voice shook the surrounding seawater endlessly. As his voice fell, two incomparably tyrannical auras rose from the courtyard behind Ao Sifin. Obviously, there were also spies from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas among the 8 distresses that had been fighting with Long Josie. Chapter 726. In the base of the evil dragon camp, besides Ao Sifin, there were 2 of the 8 distresses assisting Ao Sifin to guard this place. However, these 2 distresses were not fixed. They would be replaced every 10 days. The other 6 distresses were rarely seen. They were almost always dealing with their own affairs. This time, the Desireless Society and the Resentment Society were in charge of guarding the base. Both of them were spies of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Only a fool would believe that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was not involved in this. Thinking of the arrogant attitude of Yazi and Fu Su when they came out, Ao Sifin's face darkened slightly. She said coldly, "I was wondering why the little brother who had been suppressed by me for decades suddenly had such a big change in personality. He even dared to provoke me. It turns out that you have been preparing to seize the power for a long time." 2 demonic beasts, who were also in human form, but still had their heads, claws and teeth, appeared behind Lin Yuan. Their cold eyes fell on Lin Yuan, as if they were thinking about how to attack him. Desireless Society and the Resentment Society, you 2 are senior members of the evil dragon camp. I believe that I didn't know that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had abandoned us, and neither did you. Now that you know the truth, do you still choose to stand on the side of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Ao Sifin was still vigilant in case Yazi attacked, and her voice trembled slightly. Desireless society and the resentment society were both in the middle stage of the demonic king realm. Whether it was capturing or killing, they could easily deal with Lin Yuan, a demonic beast in the late stage of the River Lord realm. However, Ao Sifin couldn't spare any more masters to protect Lin Yuan. The two demonic beast brothers who were entangling Fu Su were adopted by Ao Sifin after he betrayed the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Although their cultivations were not as high as the middle stage of the demonic king realm, they were born with the same mind and were very good at joint attacks. However, they could only entangle Fu Su. The one on the left had a head that resembled a ferocious tiger, with cheeks on both sides of its face. Its height was also close to 2.3 meters. Although it wasn't considered tall in the world of demonic beasts, in the world of humans, this kind of body could already be considered a small giant. Obviously, this Chiobu's shape-shifting technique was far from perfect. The resentment on the right looked more like a human being, and it was a little old man about 70 or 80 years old, wearing linen clothes. He stared at Lin Yuan with a stooped body, but the back of his head was not silver-white hair, but transparent tentacles that were constantly squirming. Desireless society sneered and said coldly, "Supreme Dragon Head's words are biased. We are evil dragons who violated the rules of the Dragon Palace. No matter how the Dragon Palace deals with us, we deserve it. However, our bloodline and cultivation were all given to us by the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Without the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, we wouldn't be here." He paused and glanced at Lin Yuan. He said coldly, "Since the Dragon Palace wants the Black Zhao's life, we will take his life. It's better than the Supreme Dragon Head who would rather fall out with the clan that gave birth to you to protect an outsider, right? Do you really think I'm someone who can be trampled on?" The arrogance on Lin Yuan's face slowly disappeared. His eyes were extremely cold. Two balls of black water surged out from his black scales. In just a moment, they condensed into the Warden and the Fish Head, two early Demon King level existences. Their skin was pitch black like ink, and their eyes were dim and lifeless. However, the moment they raised their heads, the ruthlessness that surged out almost made the 2-8 bitterness level evil dragons, unable to desire and the society of resentment, feel their hearts palpitate slightly. Lin Yuan had been in the Endless Sea for a long time. Some of his strange techniques had been recorded by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Therefore, the moment the Warden and the fish-headed man appeared, the 2-8 bitter evil dragons' faces were already gloomy. They even subconsciously took a step back and didn't dare to look at Lin Yuan as unscrupulously as before. It seemed that only now did they realize that even if Lin Yuan was alone, they couldn't do anything to him. Lin Yuan had two demonic beasts at the early stage of the Monster King realm guarding him, and no matter how hard he tried to kill them, he couldn't kill them. With such combat power, he wouldn't dare to say that he could dominate the Endless Sea, but in this sea area, unless the Evil Dragon Camp, the Sea Monster Guild, and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas joined forces to kill Lin Yuan, they could only return empty-handed. The smell of gunpowder started to spread around. Except for the sea demons who were attacking, the rest of the spectators all stepped back. They were afraid that they would be killed if they got involved. "Something's not right," Lin Yuan muttered in a low voice. The 2-8 bitter evil dragons looked at Lin Yuan with fear. Although they said nice things, they didn't seem to want to attack. It seemed, they just wanted to restrain Lin Yuan and attract Lin Yuan's attention. Were they just pretending, but they didn't want to risk their lives for the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Or were they just a smokescreen? Did the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas have other killing moves? The assassins of the 9 sons of the Dragon King had their own opponents. The 2-8 bitter evil dragons didn't attack. If they had other killing moves, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas couldn't do it themselves. Even if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could send more people, they didn't have the guts to do it. If the evil dragons expelled from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas attacked Lin Yuan, it would be fine. No matter who they were loyal to, the Dragon Palace could avoid being blamed. However, if the Dragon Palace members attacked the Dragon Palace, it meant that they were determined to offend all the other forces in the endless sea. Clang! A light sound came from behind. It was too late for Lin Yuan to turn around. He subconsciously felt his scalp go numb. The golden body secrets were activated instantly, and the black scales turned into golden scales in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Lin Yuan also felt a huge force coming from behind him, which almost pushed his whole body out. The courtyard wall in front of him directly collapsed, and he fell into the courtyard. Lin Yuan felt that he had slid across at least half of the courtyard, which was a distance of more than 3,000 meters. The golden scales on his body cracked inch by inch, turning into fine powder and slowly sprinkling down. The black scales on Lin Yuan's body were exposed once again as the golden powder scattered all over the ground. Looking at the golden body tactic on his attribute panel, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a touch of bitterness. Although this martial arts skill was rated as mediocre by the system, it was still the martial arts skill that had helped Lin Yuan the most since he had transmigrated to this world. Previously, there had been situations where his progress had been reduced. However, this was the first time that his progress had been reset to 0. Just now, what had happened? The perfect golden body tactic had 65% damage immunity. Under such circumstances, it was shattered by a blow. He didn't even have the strength to stand up. How powerful was this blow? Chapter 727. After panting for a moment, Lin Yuan recovered some of his strength. However, he still lay there without moving, secretly observing the existence that had ambushed him through the eye of God. After using up all 3 probing chances, Lin Yuan still couldn't see the other party's status panel. However, he could still recognize the other party's identity, a human. In the endless sea, where demonic beasts ran rampant, where no one without dragon bloodline could enter, a human actually appeared here. Lin Yuan was sure that this human was definitely not a demonic beast that had transformed. In fact, even Ning Tianqing's transformation could be considered successful. However, he still had demonic beast tattoos on his body and would unknowingly emit demonic qi. Although most of the demonic beasts in the endless sea had begun to transform, they still retained most of their demonic beast characteristics. They could barely be considered as humanoid monsters. Even the gray-scaled flood dragon person under Lin Yuan's command couldn't compare to them. Moreover, although the person who had ambushed Lin Yuan was standing at the bottom of the sea, the earth energy in his body was majestic, constantly preventing the undercurrents from approaching. This was completely different from the demonic beasts that liked water. Through the observation of the eye of God, Lin Yuan could even see the reverence in the eyes of some of the nearby sea demon experts. It seemed that the human who had ambushed Lin Yuan was an extraordinary existence. Just like how the humans on the Tianwu continent ostracized the demonic beasts, even in a place like the northern frontier, the demonic beasts could barely coexist peacefully with the humans. In the dark corners that Lin Yuan couldn't see, there were still countless demonic beasts and humans who were hostile to each other, even killing each other. However, both sides had a tacit understanding to clean up the mess before dawn. At least on the surface, the northern frontier was still a beautiful place where humans and demonic beasts coexisted. However, in the northern frontier, when humans and demonic beasts saw each other, most of them would look at each other with contempt, hostility, or even hatred. There was no reverence or respect at all. The former was not a big deal. After all, the northern frontier was a harsh place. Countless humans who entered the Hingduan mountain range to make a living had lost their lives to the claws and fangs of the Yao beasts. There were also countless Yao beasts who were killed by the Yao beasts before they could mature. Their bodies were dismembered into countless valuable materials and sold in the human cities. The two sides had long since formed a death grudge. Without 2 or 3 generations of descendants, this grudge would never be resolved. But even if this hatred was resolved, both sides were still 2 different races. At most, they would just ignore each other. Lin Yuan felt that even if he lived until the green leaf water lotus bloomed and bore fruit, he might not be able to see it. This human must be incredible. Fisherman, that brat isn't dead yet. Why don't you go up and finish him off? Chiu Booty crossed his arms in front of his chest, a hint of fear flashing in his eyes as he asked softly. I only owe the West Sea Dragon Palace a sword strike. The fisherman turned his head to glance at Wu Yu and said indifferently, I have fulfilled my promise. From tomorrow onwards, I will leave the endless sea and return to the Sky Martial continent. Whoever stops me will die. Although the fisherman replied, he did not open his mouth. His words were filled with the sound of surging sword chi. As soon as he finished speaking, the fisherman sheathed his sword and walked towards the outer sea with an expressionless face. The Resentment Society smiled bitterly and shook its head. Like a little old man, it bent its body and slowly approached Lin Yuan with its hands behind its back. Since the fisherman was not willing to finish him off, it could only do it itself. As for whether Lin Yuan had any backup plans, that was not its concern. If they could not kill Lin Yuan today, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would take their lives. Looks like the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas really wants me dead. Lin Yuan lay on the ground as a fierce look flashed across his eyes. This fisherman was definitely not an ordinary person. At least, with Lin Yuan's understanding of the Sky Martial continent, it was impossible for the current sects and empires to produce such an outstanding disciple. This person was either from the Heavenly Gate Protectors faction, or he was like young Qinglin of the Divine Blood sect who had been hibernating in the northern frontier. He had also fallen in an ancient battle but had set up a backup plan and was reborn in the future. Such an existence owed the West Sea Dragon Palace a sword strike, but the benefits that he could bring to the West Sea Dragon Palace would definitely not be as simple as a sword strike. But today, the West Sea Dragon Palace had resolutely activated the fisherman and stabbed Lin Yuan with his sword. Although the fisherman did not kill Lin Yuan, under the 65% damage reduction, he still knocked Lin Yuan to the ground. He had not recovered even after 10 breaths of time. With such an injury, if Lin Yuan had not activated the golden body technique in time, according to the system's calculations, this injury would have been more than enough to kill him 3 times over. And this was just a casual sword strike from the fisherman. When the guy said, "Whoever stops me will die," he was really stating a fact, and not threatening the unfulfilled wish and resentment society. Tao Tai, are you still not going to make a move? Lin Yuan lay on the ground and struggled to turn over. He glanced at the warden and fish head who were being restrained by the Resentment Society and could only raise his head and roar. There was a gap of 2 realms between him and the demonic king realm. If he wanted to fight against the Resentment Society that was determined to kill him without external help, it would be a fool's dream. In the web novels in Lin Yuan's previous life, fighting above one's level seemed to be a constant topic. As long as one was called a genius, almost all of them could easily defeat opponents 1 or 2 levels higher. But in reality, this kind of fighting above one's level became more and more impossible the further one progressed. After all, even if there was a gap in attributes in the early stages, it would only be a difference of a few or 10 points. It was not difficult to fight above one's level with ruthlessness and methods, especially for someone like Lin Yuan who had added points to himself. Although he had not broken through his realm, his various attributes had already reached the peak of his current realm. In total, he was not weaker than a high-level enemy. However, the difference in attributes between the Mountain Lord realm and the Demonic King realm was already tens of thousands of points. Then, how terrifying was the difference between the Desolate Demonic realm and the Demonic King realm? 100,000. 1,000,000. Fighting above one's level. That was called courting death. Humph. The Resentment Society coldly snorted and stretched out its hand to stroke the transparent tentacles behind its head. It sneered, "Black Jiao, do you think you can escape death just because you've arranged for helpers? I've also arranged for people to be on the outside. Once someone crosses the boundary, they will immediately be entangled. Today, no one can save you, I've said it. Lin Yuan did not reply. He just kept moving his body that was like a pile of mud. Abundant demonic energy kept exploding in his body, and his damaged meridians and flesh were rapidly repaired. His condition was also recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Like a cat playing with a mouse, the Resentment Society coldly watched Lin Yuan continue to struggle, its speed still not fast nor slow. Chapter 728. Lin Yuan had become a turtle in a jar. The Resentment Society's eyes flashed with a look of contentment. This black Jiao who had made a name for himself in the Sky Martial continent, seemed to be nothing more than that. After thinking about it, the Resentment Society could not think of any loopholes in their plan. Ao Sifin had already made preparations. Once Yasi was unable to withstand the firepower, they would immediately send a reserve to hold back Ao Sifin. Thus, they were not in a hurry. As long as Lin Yuan was dead, everything would be fine. Thus, they decided to torture Lin Yuan to death, to let the entire Endless Sea and even the Sky Martial continent know what would happen to those who were not willing to cooperate with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. The Resentment Society could not see behind them, and did not expect that an even more terrifying existence than they had imagined was baring its ferocious fangs, and was closing in on Lin Yuan. A late-stage Mountain Lord Evil Dragon. One punch. An early-stage Demonic Beast King Evil Dragon. It was still one punch. The muscular Tao Tai was like a cold-killing machine. The moment Lin Yuan's words landed, he suddenly charged out from a corner, not caring about his own side. He walked towards the area where Lin Yuan was, and smashed the demonic beasts in front of him into meat paste like he was swatting flies. At first, there were still some sea demons who were unconvinced and clamored to find trouble with Tao Tai. However, after killing 7 Demon King Realm sea demons in a row, Tao Tai didn't even have the intention to stop and take a breath. After such a calm attitude was revealed, most of the sea demons silently took a step back and chose to stay away from this godlike existence. Danger. As a demonic beast, it was instinctive to sense danger. The Resentment Society was thinking about how to torture and kill Lin Yuan as they approached Lin Yuan. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a chill suddenly drilled out from the bottom of their hearts, and their little old man's body directly trembled. They subconsciously turned their head, and saw a 3-meter-tall giant standing behind them, almost shrouding their current body in shadows. Hey Jiao, although you and my boss are colleagues, that's a different matter. The last time I saved you, it was because my boss gave me an order. This time, I'm saving you. It's my personal action. Do you understand what I mean? Tao Tai did not seem to be in a hurry to kill the Resentment Society. Instead, he looked at Lin Yuan who was jumping on the ground like a salted fish, and then asked a question. Last time. Boss? Colleague? A look of doubt flashed through Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes. He didn't have the memory of the puppet's body. The word Tao Tai just now was completely subconscious, belonging to Lin Yuan's survival instinct. However, Lin Yuan searched his entire memory and still couldn't remember who this giant man was, let alone what he meant by boss and colleague. Good heavens, after waking up, I directly became a worker. Wait a minute, Lin Yuan's eyes changed slightly. It wasn't that he didn't have the memory of the puppet's body at all. After confirming that it was safe, the puppet's body would report the situation to Lin Yuan's consciousness every 3 days. When the two were completely disconnected, it was after the puppet's body was imprisoned in the underwater prison. After all, at that time, the puppet's body wasn't sure if it would be monitored. In order to ensure that the news of his body being carried in the beast pouch wouldn't leak out, Lin Yuan's body had never been released. He didn't have any memory of this Tao Tai, which meant that he knew him, which should have happened after he was imprisoned in the underwater prison. But that was where the strangeness came from. Tao Tai didn't have the blood of the dragon race. Lin Yuan didn't even know what it was. Under the observation of the eye of God, Lin Yuan could clearly see that this guy was essentially an object composed of countless insects. It was just that these insects didn't seem to have their own consciousness, and all of them acted in unison according to the consciousness of Tao Tai. That was why there was such a giant man standing here. If Tao Tai wanted to at this moment, he could turn into countless insects and hide in the corners of the endless sea. Moreover, those evil dragons seemed to have no impression of Tao Tai at all, otherwise it would be impossible for them to ignore such a powerful existence. Therefore, this guy was not a member of the dragon race of the Four Seas, nor was it a sea monster with a grudge against the dragon palace of the Four Seas. It was hard to say whether it was a living thing in essence. It was more like the existence of Lin Yuan's previous puppet's body. Lin Yuan even felt that Tao Tai must be the scapegoat for the explosion of his consciousness that controlled the puppet's body. "What do you want?" Lin Yuan asked tentatively while healing his wounds. Although he wasn't sure what the other party was, since his survival instinct felt that he could be safe today after calling out Tao Tai, then he might as well believe in his choice and talk to Tao Tai about the conditions for his attack. Tao Tai said with a smile, "You are the same as my boss, an existence from the other side of the bitter sea. The creatures of this world don't know what the title Tao Tai means, but don't you know? The same as his boss." Both of them were existences from the other side of the bitter sea. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment, and then his eyes suddenly flashed. Tao Tai's boss was also one of the hosts selected by the system, and he should also belong to the quite powerful category. Even if the current Lin Yuan were to go all out, regardless of attribute points, materials, and the like, he could at most rely on the system to copy some fierce generals like Xiang Yu and Lu Bu. He was barely standing at the limit of human beings, but that was all. Lin Yuan still couldn't create an existence like Tao Tai. The body of a puppet should be aware of this. Therefore, in his subconscious mind, he felt that once Tao Tai appeared, he would be safe. This was a mixed double fight from the two system hosts. It was definitely not something that a mere demon king could withstand. "Although I know that you are not a real Tao Tai, your character and appearance are indeed very similar to the characteristics of Tao Tai in the records I have read. It seems that your boss is far stronger than I thought." Lin Yuan's eyes flashed and he said in a deep voice, "I know you can eat, but eating meat and eating soil are two different concepts. If you help me, I can tell you the location of a demonized black tortoise." The biggest characteristic of Tao Tai was its gluttony. In mythological records, it was a beast that symbolized greed. It was said that because it did not eat enough, it ate its own body, leaving only its big mouth and head. This guy was an imitation of Tao Tai. It also did not have its own body, and its character was quite similar. To be able to create such an existence, it was feared that the boss that Lin Yuan had never met before was already among the top of the system hosts. Chapter 729. In Lin Yuan's previous life, some picky diners were also called gluttons. Such an existence might refuse many temptations, but they would never refuse a delicious meal. For Tao Tai, it should be the same. Although the number of demon beasts in the endless sea was not small, and their bloodlines were not weak, almost all of them having the blood of the dragon race flowing in their veins, these demon beasts with the blood of the dragon race and the demon beasts of the dragon race were still essentially two different species. For an existence like Tao Tai, the real temptation was the ancestral dragons of the Four Seas dragon clan, because they were real dragons. No matter how pure the bloodline of the other dragon blood demon beasts was, they could not arouse Taoya's interest. But Black Tortoise was different. Even if it was not the black tortoise in the myths and legends, it had the blood of a holy beast, which was far more attractive to Tao Tai than these ordinary demon beasts of the endless sea. Although the last time they met, the demonized black tortoise mistakenly thought that Lin Yuan was a descendant of the demon court, so it took some care of Lin Yuan. But it was undeniable that in the war against Hongjun, the black tortoise had begun to distort and could no longer return to its original appearance. Over the years, if it had not been for the suppression of the sarira of the senior monk, it was feared that it would have long lost itself and become a great demon that wreaked havoc on the northern frontier. Lin Yuan did not want to bury such a ticking time bomb in the northern frontier. It must be dealt with as soon as possible. A ruler should have the appearance of a ruler. Putting aside personal grievances, Lin Yuan needed to be responsible for the people of the northern frontier. Tao Tai rolled his eyes and nodded with a smile, saying, "I am satisfied with this reward." However, at this moment, it seemed that resentment, which had been ignored by the two of them, suddenly raised its head. Its face was full of undisguised viciousness. The transparent tentacles behind its head suddenly danced and pierced directly into Tao Tai's chest. "Black Jiao, I have to admit that the helper you found is very strong." After the tentacle succeeded, the Society of Resentment's face became even more ruthless. "But you shouldn't have ignored me. My tentacle contains a very strong neurotoxin. Even Lord Dragon King would be paralyzed for a while if he touched it. Your helper has at most 3 breaths of time to live." As soon as he said that, the Resentment Society's expression turned sinister. He strode forward and continued, "Black Jiao, I originally wanted to give you a quick death, but I've changed my mind now. I'll make you die a horrible death." The Resentment Society was originally hesitating between killing Lin Yuan and quickly getting rid of him. They slowed down before to think about how to deal with him, but after the appearance of Tao Tai, they lost face in an instant. At this moment, they were furious, and the Resentment Society no longer had any scruples. There were transparent tentacles behind its head. Lin Yuan hadn't guessed that the Resentment Society had the bloodline of a monster beast. Now the answer had been revealed. In addition to the bloodline of the dragon race, this guy also had the characteristics of a jellyfish. No wonder this guy could clearly transform himself into a human form and then start a new life on the Tianwu continent like Ning Tianxing, but he didn't do so. Instead, he kept the tentacles behind his head. Then these tentacles were likely to be one of his trump cards. Jellyfish looked very beautiful, but they were poisonous. Their transparent tentacles stored neurotoxins to fight against hunters or paralyze their prey. Some of the more poisonous jellyfish could easily poison a human to death with just a touch. Since Lin Yuan's rebirth, he didn't know much about the sea monster beasts, but just like in his previous life, the monster beasts that could dominate or roar in the endless sea almost all had the bloodline of whales, sharks, and the like. Just like in the Tianwu continent, wolves, tigers, and leopards were better than cows, sheep, and horses. This was the gap between species. No matter which world it was in, it was the same. However, this was the first time Lin Yuan had seen a jellyfish-type monster beast. He didn't need to think too much to know that the toxicity of the Resentment Society couldn't be weak. After all, it was in existence in the Monster King realm. Squeezing out a little bit of the neurotoxins from its body could probably instantly kill a monster beast in the desolate monster realm. Unfortunately, this time was different. It was true that the Resentment Society had succeeded, but it was also a fact that they had found the wrong opponent. What was Tao Tai? Lin Yuan didn't know. But he saw clearly that Tao Tai's body was made up of countless tiny insects. It wasn't even a whole body. The so-called organs and nerves, it didn't have anything. Things like toxins naturally had no effect on it. Some of the insects were infected by the neurotoxins, so it directly abandoned those poisoned insects and completed the detoxification. Lin Yuan saw it very clearly. The moment the transparent tentacles pierced into Tao Tai's body, the insects on the surface of Tao Tai's body began to slowly sink into its body, and its chest instantly collapsed into a hole. A moment later, the insects near the hole began to split themselves. In the blink of an eye, the original one insect became 7 or 8. Due to the small size of these insects and their fast splitting speed, coupled with the fact that Lin Yuan was the only witness, the rest of the monster beasts didn't realize that this unreasonably strong existence was completely different from them. With this kind of body made up of insects that could split themselves to repair injuries, Tao Tai could be said to have a true immortal body. No matter how powerful the healing techniques in the world were, no matter how strong the physique, no matter how tyrannical the bloodline, they were not as powerful as the insects on Tao Tai's body. Even before the battle, Tao Tai only needed to leave one insect somewhere and it could easily achieve the legendary rebirth from a drop of blood. Paw! Tao Tai suddenly stretched out his hand and pressed down on the resentment society who was just about to take a step forward. His low voice was like that of an evil spirit crawling out of hell. I hate it when people interrupt me, but you taste pretty good. It's limp and numb. It seems that the neurotoxin in your body is a good seasoning. It wasn't just Lin Yuan who was dumbfounded. Almost all the sea monsters who were watching from the sidelines opened their mouths wide. That was a neurotoxin that could instantly kill a desolate demon realm expert. Even in existence at the level of the Four Seas Dragon King would be paralyzed and unable to move for a long time. What did this guy say? Limp and numb, a good seasoning. Could it be that this guy was more fierce than the Dragon King? Tao Tai suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed the tentacles behind the Resentment Society's head. With a strong pull, a large amount of juice splashed in all directions. More than 10 transparent tentacles had neatly appeared in Tao Tai's right hand. The Resentment Society was kicked away by his foot. At this moment, it was constantly rolling and twitching on the ground. His face was twisted and ferocious. It was unknown whether it was because of hatred or because of pain. Chapter 730. Several transparent tentacles jumped in Tao Tai's palm as if they had become living creatures. How is this possible? How can you be okay? Chiao Wudi, who was confronting the warden and the fish-head man, stared at Tao Tai in a daze, and the expression on his face suddenly became strange. As one of the 8 distresses and a spy arranged by the Dragon Palace, it was very clear about its colleagues' means. No matter who it was that was poisoned by the neurotoxin, the paralysis was considered good. Even if it was poisoned, it had to be supplemented with various phases to recuperate for at least half a year before it could walk. What was the origin of Black Zhao's helper? Tao Tai turned his head and glanced at Chiao Wudi, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a cold voice, "There is nothing on your body that can arouse my appetite. Trash like you is not worthy of living in this world." Listening to Tao Tai's words, Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched slightly. He suddenly remembered a saying in his previous life that he scolded his good-for-nothing children, "It's better for me to give birth to a piece of barbecued pork than to give birth to you." Tao Tai's words were somewhat similar. So, in your eyes, other people don't even have the qualifications to be food, so they simply don't deserve to live in this world. Almost there. Lin Yuan lowered his head silently, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. It was still the same sentence he said before. Whether it was a human or a monster beast, as long as their cultivation reached a certain level, no one was a fool. Those who treated others as fools were fools. It was just that most of them were used to solving problems by force, so they didn't like to use their brains. But just because they didn't like to use their brains, it didn't mean that they didn't know how to use their brains. Lin Yuan made such a big move here today in order to attract the attention of the entire Endless Sea, and at the same time force the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to have no way out. They could only stay in the Endless Sea and fight to the death with the old rulers. As for the monster beasts of other races, they would not listen to Lin Yuan's one-sided words. They would definitely send their confidants to the front line arranged by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to investigate the situation. Once the news was confirmed, there would be no way out. Why did the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas run away? Because they couldn't beat the old rulers. Or rather, even if they could win, the losses would be too heavy, so they were unwilling to fight. The Dragon Palaces of the Four Seas were all like this. If it were the demonic beasts from the Outer Sea or the Sea Monster Guild, they wouldn't have a good time fighting the old dominators one-on-one, let alone the sea dominators who were struggling to survive. If they wanted to win, they had to team up to fight this battle. If one party didn't participate, it meant that their loss would be bigger. Thus, they had cut off everyone's retreat. No one should think about running away. Whoever ran away would be the enemy of the endless sea. Then why did the dragon palace of the four seas hide the matter of the aberrants? Although the martial heaven continent was vast and boundless, after so many years of development, whether it was humans, demonic beasts, demi-humans, or other races, they had already occupied most of the land. The population was close to saturation. Even if there was no blood feud between the various powers, they would still attack and kill each other. Through this method, they would reduce the pressure on the population saturation. If the native creatures of the sky martial continent were like this, how could there be a place that accepted the demonic beasts from the endless sea? If the dragon palace of the four seas migrated, the sky martial continent might not even be able to eat it, let alone the entire endless sea. Thus, if they left too much, the sky martial continent wouldn't be able to eat it. At that time, not only the native creatures of the sky martial continent, even the demonic beasts of the endless sea would have to kill each other for survival. With the aberrants coveting behind them, everyone would die if they fought. However, no one would choose to wait for death. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan had directly expressed his stance. Now, where else could accept the migration of the endless sea? Only the Shenwu dynasty, which was under the chaos of the sky demon. However, the territory of the Shenwu dynasty bordered the northern frontier. In the entire sky martial continent, other than the guardian of the heavenly gate, there really wasn't any force that dared to snatch food from the northern frontier. In fact, even the guardian of the heavenly gate had been smashed shut by Lin Yuan's various spiritual objects. Even if they still had some little tricks, they had to be wary of the ancient demon court behind Lin Yuan. If the war in the endless sea didn't go well, the only choice for these sea demon clans was to befriend Lin Yuan. Whether it was the dragon palace of the four seas or the sea demon guild, after leaving the endless sea, they were just slightly stronger demonic beasts. They were far from having the ability to challenge the guardian of the heavenly gate. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so few demonic beasts guarding the heavenly gate, and those land demonic beasts wouldn't be kept in captivity in the Hengduan mountain range. It was impossible to fight. Therefore, in the end, who could go ashore to ensure the survival of the clan, still depended on whether Lin Yuan nodded or not. Speculators, Lin Yuan softly muttered, and the light in his eyes flickered again. There was no shortage of speculators in any world. Although he had offended the dragon palace of the four seas, there would be countless sea demon clans who were unwilling to bet their lives on this war. They would do everything they could to please Lin Yuan. Whether it was a blessing or a curse, it was hard to say. It was just that the means of the dragon palace of the four seas were indeed somewhat beyond Lin Yuan's expectations. The plan to use the evil dragon camp had been repeatedly deduced 4 times before. Under the premise that the dragon palace of the four seas didn't take action, they could definitely firmly suppress the claws and teeth of the dragon palace of the four seas, giving the other demonic beast clans in the endless sea time to understand the truth. When the matter of the old ruler spread throughout the endless sea, Lin Yuan would naturally become important. Unfortunately, although Lin Yuan had embarked on the path of God, he was not an omniscient and omnipotent existence after all. Although 5 members of the 9 sons of the dragon palace had died, he didn't expect that the 2 8-bitter evil dragons guarding the evil dragon camp were also chess pieces planted by the dragon palace of the four seas in the evil dragon camp. If it weren't for Tao Tai, he would have lost his life here today. Your Excellency doesn't have the blood of my dragon race, but you can come and go freely in the deep sea. Your cultivation must be very high. Qiu Buji cupped his fists at Tao Tai and said in a deep voice, although I don't know what kind of friendship you have with this Black Jiao. But if I didn't hear wrong, you were asking for benefits from the Black Jiao before, right? If it's just a deal, why don't Your Excellency make a deal with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Make a deal with you? Tao Tai raised the corner of his eyes slightly, and a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. He smiled and said, "What the Black Jiao can give, you can't give. Now I'm in a good mood. If you kneel down and accept your death, I can give you a quick death. A guy who makes people lose their appetite shouldn't be alive." As soon as his voice fell, Tao Tai stuffed all the transparent tentacles in his hand into his mouth and chewed them with crunching sounds. Transparent juice overflowed from the corner of Tao Tai's mouth, and was soon licked clean by a scarlet-long tongue. Chapter 731. It wasn't until all the transparent tentacles had been chewed and swallowed that Tao Tai's face showed a look of satisfaction. It was as if what he had just eaten was not a carrier of neurotoxins, but some kind of delicacy. Many sea monsters who were watching the battle quietly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. However, in just a moment, most of these sea monsters directly raised their hands and slapped themselves in the face, pulling out the bold thoughts in their minds. "That thing can't be eaten. You'll really die if you eat it. Your Excellency, what do you mean by this?" Qiu Wuji seemed to completely ignore Tao Tai's ridicule and said in a deep voice, "My dragon palace of the four seas covers the entire endless sea. All the races in this sea are the slaves of my dragon palace. If your Excellency has anything you want, just say it. My dragon clan of the four seas will do our best to satisfy your Excellency's request." Although the sea monsters around were dissatisfied, no one dared to act out in public. Today's dragon palace of the four seas was indeed on the verge of collapse, but that was built on the condition that the aberrations were causing trouble. Now that the fig leaf had been removed by Lin Yuan, who dared to provoke the dragon palace of the four seas again? They would hit you back, and you couldn't show the slightest bit of temper. Otherwise, they would directly drag you to the front line of the battlefield and directly cut off your clan's inheritance. If the dragon palace of the four seas was serious, looking at the entire endless sea, only the evil dragon camp could stand up to them. The other two major forces were the Outer Sea Monsters Guild and the Sea Monster Guild. Although their strength was not below the dragon palace of the four seas, after all, their organizational structure was too loose. Without a certain amount of time to integrate their forces, they might be scattered by the dragon palace of the four seas in a face-to-face confrontation. After a while, the two sides would fall into a long tug of war and be unable to extricate themselves. Therefore, the dragon palace of the four seas spoke arrogantly, and the sea monsters could only grit their teeth and endure. "This is the endless sea. The dragon clan of the four seas has informed the sea areas for thousands of years. It said that all the races in the sea are the slaves of the dragon palace. This is not wrong." A dull voice suddenly sounded, and immediately, a big lizard covered with brown scales appeared in Lin Yuan's line of sight, maintaining a human posture. With just one glance, Lin Yuan's pupils contracted violently. Divinity. He actually felt divinity from this giant lizard. The cultivators of this world believed that the so-called ancient gods were just some more powerful life forms, which meant that they were the oldest cultivators. Because they could control lightning, move mountains and fill seas, and even turn their breath into ice, most cultivators could do such things. The world in Lin Yuan's previous life had a history of 5,000 years. In the previous eras, there were countless records of civilization. Even some of the secrets of the untainted world could be found in the records. Rather than saying that this world was a small world split from the untainted world, it was better to say that it had been transformed by some mighty force into an imitation of the untainted world. Except that it was not as vast as the untainted world, and some secret realms were nowhere to be found. It was almost the original appearance of the untainted world. Because of the high level of civilization, although Lin Yuan had not been in contact with the cultivation world in his previous life, he knew that the cultivation world in his previous life was definitely not comparable to the half-baked cultivation world in the Tianmen continent. At the very least, the people in his previous life were very clear that gods and immortals were different. The so-called immortals were the real top cultivators. They used to be ordinary people. Perhaps they had no name or surname, or perhaps they had left a deep mark in the history books. But without exception, they were all powerful cultivators. They called themselves immortals, and so on, but they would not call themselves immortals, let alone gods. Gods were purely creatures of faith. For example, if enough people believed that a stone was a god, then the stone was really a god. This was the path to becoming a god by absorbing the power of faith. In the ancient tribes in his previous life, they would always believe in some strange beasts as totems to protect the tribesmen. This was the path to becoming an ancient god. Lin Yuan was also working hard to advance on this path. Because although the totems that the ancient tribes believed in were symbols, they were indeed strange beasts that had once existed. They were essentially no different from demonic beasts. They could use the power of faith to improve themselves, and they could also use demonic power to improve themselves. The lack of either would not affect their survival. At first, the system hoped to turn Lin Yuan into a god. Because then, the system could cut off Lin Yuan's channel to obtain the power of faith at any time. After losing the power of faith, the so-called god would quickly perish. It could be said that the system directly controlled Lin Yuan's life and death. But Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to make a choice, so there was an opportunity to talk to the system on an equal footing and cooperate with each other today. Who are you? Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with vigilance. When this path to becoming a god reached a certain stage, divinity would condense in the god's body. This kind of divinity could be recognized as the residue after the power of faith was consumed. It could also be understood as a blessing bestowed by the god to his followers. It was just like how the Western gods transformed humans into angels because they stripped the divinity from themselves and gave it to mortals. That was how angels were born. The big lizard in front of him was not a divine creature like an angel. It was essentially an ancient god. Lin Yuan could feel that there were some thin threads connected to its body that represented the power of faith. This meant that this big lizard still had believers in the human world. Although those thin threads that represented the power of faith were no longer bright, it was undeniable that this big lizard was once an extremely powerful ancient god. Because according to the exact number given by the system, Lin Yuan would have to consume at least 500,000 points of the power of faith to obtain 1 point of divinity. The divinity hidden in this big lizard's body was at least over 100. This ancient god must have been extremely prominent in the past. Even though the power of faith had declined, there were still believers quietly worshipping it. It was likely that it was an almighty being that surpassed the times. Just an old man on his deathbed. This old man has been sleeping here for more than 3,000 years. If it weren't for my young friend, I might have to sleep for another 2,000 years. Although I wasn't waiting for you, this old man is deeply gratified to be able to see my young friend's passage. The big lizard's mouth opened slightly, as if it was trying hard to squeeze out a smile. However, on the lizard's scarred face, the smile was hideous no matter how one looked at it. Sleeping for more than 3,000 years. Sleeping for another 2,000 years. Lin Yuan was not the only one. Almost all the sea demons present held their breaths and looked at the big lizard that suddenly appeared with disbelief. Some people's eyes flickered, some people had doubts on their faces, and some even vaguely revealed a bit of killing intent. It seemed that they were targeting this ancient god of unknown origin.